Let the record reflect that Mayor Motazedy, myself, Mayor Pro Tem James, who I believe is absent, and Councilmember Robinson are teleconferencing from home. All votes this evening will be by a roll call vote. Tonight's invocation will be led by Councilmember Robinson.
Thank you. I hope you can all hear me. Can you?
Yes.
Okay. The response was a little slow, but I'm going to give it a shot here. Father God, we just thank you for this evening, for this opportunity to get together to do the people's business in the city of Lake Forest. I thank you for our recent elections and our ability to self-govern, to be able to select those who will oversee our city. And I pray for this evening's meeting that you will bless it, that you'll provide us wisdom and guidance as we make decisions. And I pray a special blessing upon the 2 new council members that will join the city council later this evening. I ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Thank you very much, Councilman Robinson. Appreciate that. The next is Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Councilmember Tedimer.
Thank you, Mayor. We all please rise and join me as we say the Pledge of Allegiance to this great nation. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, next is public comment section. You may know on March 4th, 2020, Governor Newsom proclaimed a state of emergency as a result of the threat of COVID-19. On March 17th, issued Executive Order N2920, which allows a local legislative body to hold public meetings via teleconferencing. The executive order also allows a legislative body to make public meetings electronically accessible to members of the public seeking to observe and address the legislative body. Pursuant to the executive order and given the current health concerns, the city is streaming this meeting live on its website at www.lakeforestca.gov. Additionally, the city has provided members of the public the opportunity to submit e-comments, which will be added to the record, or to leave a voicemail message, which will be played during tonight's meeting. The city is allowing members of the public the opportunity to give in-person comments at the beginning of the meeting only. These in-person comments will be taken all at once at the beginning of tonight's meeting. To provide in-person comments, individuals are asked to fill out a speaker card indicating which item they would like to speak on. Due to the health crisis and to protect the council, staff, and members of the public, speakers are asked to wait outside of City Hall until it is their turn to speak. When it is their turn, the city will call the speaker's name and allow one person at a time onto council chambers to provide public comment and testimony. Request that speakers exit council chambers when they are done speaking to allow for the next speaker to enter. Madam Clerk, have we received any requests to speak this evening?
I've received one speaker card from Andrea Alexander.
I wondered. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you once again about community choice energy. As you may recall, in June of 2020, you were presented with Canyon Democrat resolution in support of CCE. This resolution represents the voices of 400 of our members. That's 400 voices speaking to you about the importance of this issue and requesting that you take action in formation of a joint powers authority for procurement of energy. CCE will give us the ability to determine a more abundant use of renewable energy sources and reduce greenhouse gases that are damaging to our environment. We have seen the effects of climate change around us, and it is up to us to do something. We have a responsibility to do something. Let me remind you that in the City of Lake Forest 2020 legislative platform, items number 11 and 12, you all agreed that you would support legislative efforts that encourage and defend our municipality's ability to expand services through CCE, and that the city opposes legislation and policies that limit the type and/or number of clean and renewable sustainable energy sources available to consumers. If you oppose CCE, are you not in opposition to the very platform you adopted? With CCE, we determine the amount of renewable energy in our consumer product package, not Southern California Edison. Within the JPA, each city creates their own package. Also, individual citizens have the ability to opt out. However, a vast majority of people are concerned about our environment and would love to see steps being taken to reduce greenhouse gases. This is one of those steps. Now let's talk money. We are already indebted to Irvine for the cost of gathering the load data from SCE. That was the first step. I understand that SCE will have buyout costs related to prior obligations, and those are unknown at this time. So there are some variables. The city's consultants have indicated that the cost could have a range of plus or minus 2%. However, cities such as Lancaster that have adopted CCE have stated that their initial costs remained the same and then gradually decreased. It should be noted that Edison has already notified us of a significant increase to our bills in 2021, 10 to 14%. My jaw dropped when I saw the notice. You have taken the initial step of gathering the load data from SCE. Now please consider taking the next step and partnering with Irvine, Costa Mesa, and Fullerton to advance the planning and execution of all matters in the formation of a JPA for CE. That would include the JPA would include Lake Forest. The future is renewable energy. You have an obligation to take steps to move us there. Let me just add a quick thank you to outgoing council member Dwight Robinson, who I see is not here tonight, for bringing CCE to the council in 2018. Councilman member Robinson saw the value in this endeavor, and I applaud him for bringing us to this point. I wish him well in his retirement from the council and hope that he will continue to be an activist in support of CCE in our community. Good luck to you, sir, wherever you are. You will be missed. Thank you all. Have a good evening and a great holiday season, and be safe and well.
Okay. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Yes, go right ahead.
We do have additional speakers that are coming in this evening. Our
Okay.
next speaker is Margie Matzel.
Is it okay to take the mask off when I'm speaking?
Yes.
Thank you, Councilman Voights. Good evening, Mayor Motazzati, Councilmember Tedimer. I know Councilman Robinson, you're on the phone, Councilmember Voights, and Mayor Pro Tem Mike James. I just wanted to speak, I don't have everything organized, prepared, but I just wanted to speak on behalf of Councilmember Dwight Robinson. He's become a valued friend over the last 8 years, his family, Holly and Corinne and Luke and Micah. He served honorably, and sad to see him leave, but I know he'll stay involved. And there were kind of some challenges when he was a council member, but he held his head high and he showed a lot of integrity and patience. And I know you're listening, Councilmember Robinson. I want to thank you for serving the city well, serving the community of Lake Forest well, as among other areas that I know you're involved in on different committees. We're going to miss you, but I know you'll be involved again. But I know you'll have precious time with your family. And I just want to thank you for your service and for your integrity. And you served the city very, very well, but you will be missed. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Maxwell.
Okay, Madam Mayor, we have, our next speaker is Rick Lancaster.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, just like to say, on behalf of myself and my spouse that has passed away, we've been a part of Lake Forest for the last 30 years or more. And I just like to thank Dwight for all that he's done for the city. And just want to tell him that I really like the way the city has been going and the way things have been, just watching the city in the direction it's gone. I obviously know some of the other council members and want to thank you guys also, but especially tonight to Dwight, just thank you for all your service, your true concern for the city and for its people. And we're going to miss you. We love you, and we hope that sometime later on, when things change a bit for you, that you'll be able to come back and be a part of our city and the council also again. So I just want to thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Comments. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Next speaker?
Our next speaker is Jennifer Conley.
Sounds familiar.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. It's good to see your couple faces and hear their voices. I hope you're all well. I'd like to take this time to thank Councilmember Robinson for his service to Lake Forest, a community I know he loves dearly. I've had the pleasure to serve as the liaison to the council for the last 5 years of Councilmember Robinson's term, and was constantly impressed and appreciative of his ability to be fair and reasonable under any circumstance. I am so proud of him. And even though I know there's some relief in passing these duties on, I am sure his dedication to this community will never end. Excuse me. As someone who grew up here, I thank him dearly for that, and I wish him all the best on his next journey.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you very
Nice
much,
to see you.
Jennifer. Thank you for coming.
Nice to hear your voice, Jennifer. Next speaker, Madam Clerk?
Yes, our next speaker is Hiya Ip.
Good evening. My name is Hiya Ip. I want to speak on number 9, community choice energy. So I watched the council meeting last time. I want to say, actually, I knew Lake Forest started working on this long ago in 2017. So I just want to say first, thank you for working on this, because this is not a mandate. So take some kind of vision and leadership to start working on it, to make time to work on that. So I want to say thank you for that. And I also noticed that last time you were very careful with your decision. So that's a very good sign. Unfortunately, I'm speaking before the item now, so I'm not sure how this discussion will evolve with the council. So just based on what happened the last few council meetings in different cities, so I assume you probably know that you already knew that Fullerton signed on to the JPA, and Costa Mesa is, they're in, but they're negotiating. So I just want to say, whatever council decide today, if your position is still same as last time, please don't give up. Keep talking about it, keep negotiating. I'm sure you know this too well from your other experiences that we're so close to it. We just need to keep pushing it. And I want to thank you on behalf of many people. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Yes, thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any more public speakers?
Madam Mayor, that concludes our in-person comments for the evening. We do have one voicemail message to play for you.
All right, let us go ahead.
Yes, hi, this is Mark Mon, the president of the El Toro Water District. Your city is in our service area, and I'm calling in reference to the CCA. I am not speaking for the board because I have not spoken to them about it, but I believe, personally, I'd like to support the CCA and encourage the city of Lake Forest to join the new Orange County Power Authority, so the residents and businesses can save money and enjoy the other benefits as soon as possible. That choice is a key part of this opportunity. I see very little downside to becoming a charter member. Thank you very much. Appreciate you listening. Have a great day. Be safe.
Mayor, that concludes our voicemail comments for this evening.
Thank you very much. All right, that moves us to the consent calendar. Items number 1 through 8, all matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the city council or staff request specific items to be removed from the calendar by a separate action. Have there been any requests to move any items from the consent calendar?
I've received no requests to remove any items from the consent calendar, Mayor.
Madam Mayor,
Okay,
I'd like to move the consent calendar and warrant registry, and I'd like to make a statement in doing so. There are warrants on the register that...
Hold on, I'll make a second to that, and then yes, I'll let you go. There's a couple, I think, of people that need to read, but yes, go right ahead.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. My statement is there are warrants on the register of the county, to the County of Orange. I'm an employee of the County of Orange, but I do not work in the department that generated the warrants. Because the County of Orange is a public agency, and because I do not work for the department in question, I have determined that I have a non-interest in these warrants, and I will vote on them. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I could?
Right ahead, sir.
Thank you. There are warrants on the register to the Irvine Ranch Water District. I'm an employee of Irvine Ranch Water District, but I do not work for the department that generated the warrants. Because Irvine Ranch Water District is a public agency and because I do not work for the department in question, I have determined that I have a non-interest in the warrants and I will vote on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Teddemer. Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second to move items as recommended. Do you want us to list off our votes?
Yes, let's do a roll call vote. Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Teddemer.
Aye.
Councilmember Voights.
Yes.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0 with Mayor Pro Tem James absent.
Thank you. moves us to our discussion items number 9 and 10. Number 9, community choice aggregation. Madam City Manager, please introduce the item.
Thank you, Mayor Motazedi. As you'll recall, you discussed this item on October 6th during your discussion calendar, and your direction to staff was to have the city manager work with SEE to obtain our load data, as well as provide that load data to a consultant so they could provide a pro rata report to us, or a pro forma, sorry, that would show how Lake Forest's rates may be affected if they were included in a CCA. And so we're back tonight with that report for you. And so I will bring up our acting senior management analyst, Adrian Grijalva, for a brief report.
The many hats that you wear.
Test, test. Okay. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. Tonight, we are going to discuss community choice energy or aggregation, also known as CCEs and CCAs. Joining me in a virtual capacity is Gary Saliba, representing EES Consulting, Ryan Barron with BB&K, and Mike Carroll, Vice Mayor, City of Irvine. We will all be available to answer any questions you may have at the end of the presentation. At the October 6th City Council meeting, the City Council directed the City Manager to work with EES Consulting to obtain SCE load data for a preliminary pro forma analysis. EES Consulting provided staff with 3 draft pro forma scenarios on October 28th. These scenarios were pending SCE load data. A week later, on November 6th, SCE provided staff with the city's 2019 load data. On November 11th, EES Consulting provided the city a city-by-city breakdown of customer accounts and verified its initial draft scenarios were consistent with load data, pending a 93% participation rate. Then, on November 16th, at the request of the city manager, EES sent a 4th pro forma containing figures for the cities of Costa Mesa, Fullerton, Huntington Beach, Irvine, and Lake Forest. EES Consulting worked with the cities in the table above and sourced load data from SCE to draft a preliminary pro forma analysis. This table shows the annual usage for SCE customers within the city limits for the 7 jurisdictions. Load share will change depending on the scenario and ultimately who joins the JPA.
Mr. Grijalva, I'm sorry to interrupt, but those of us that are calling in on the phone cannot hear you. And whoever's calling in, I appreciate it if you can mute your microphone, please. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Mayor, can you hear me better at all?
Try to speak from the back podium.
Testing, testing. Madam Mayor, can you hear me better now?
I can hear you now. I couldn't hear you at all, but
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and restart the presentation. On October 6, 2020, the City Council directed the City Manager to work with EES Consulting to obtain SCE load data for a preliminary pro forma analysis. EES provided staff with 3 draft pro forma scenarios on October 28th. These scenarios were pending SCE load data. A week later, on November 6th, SCE provided staff with the city's 2019 load data. On November 11th, EES provided a city-by-city breakdown of customer accounts and verified its initial draft scenarios were consistent with the load data, pending a 93% participation rate. On November 16th, at the request of the city manager, EES sent a 4th pro forma containing figures for the cities of Costa Mesa, Fullerton, Huntington Beach, Irvine, and Lake Forest. EES worked with the cities in the table above and sourced data from SCE to draft a preliminary pro forma analysis. This table shows the annual usage for SCE customers within the city limits for the 7 jurisdictions. Load share will change depending on the scenario and ultimately who joins the JPA. This graph illustrates Lake Forest customer load mix. Our breakdown is as follows: 1% lighting, 1% agriculture, 17% industrial, 31% residential, and 50% commercial. EES Consulting included Lake Forest in 2 of its scenarios. The following table illustrates the estimated costs and discretionary revenues over 10 years for the CCE program. At this time, staff is seeking City Council direction on next steps. We've provided 4 different options, the first being direct staff to monitor the OC CCE and provide a 6-month update, direct staff to hold a special meeting next week to consider the OC CCE resolution, JPA, ordinance, and appointment of a director and 1 alternate, hire an independent consultant to review Lake Forest SCE load data and advise staff on next steps, or the City Council may choose to receive and file this report. This concludes our presentation. We're here to answer any questions or concerns the City Council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Gravala. Do any members of the council have any questions or items for discussion regarding this matter?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to hear from the public if there's any more public to be heard from. Will we hear from any more? Or did we have them all come through on that initial? Okay, and I know there's some people here that are on the. Okay.
I understand we have no additional speakers.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, I did see many email comments, but yeah, thank you. I will open it up to discussion.
I think Dwight's speaking. We can't hear you, Dwight.
Madam Mayor, I have a question to start with, if possible.
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay. The first question is regarding the 93% participation rate. Is that kind of like a standard that CCEs are seeing in throughout the state, or where does that number come from?
Hey, Gary, I'll go ahead and let you answer that one. Looks like you might be muted right now. We still can't hear you.
My other question is regarding the, I understand that there is some thought that there's a March 2021 out date on this. If you decided to get involved now, you might be able to get out as late as March 31st. Is that accurate?
So the JPA stipulates that should a city that originally joins this JPA and would like to terminate its membership, we need to provide the board of directors with 15 days notice before March 1st, 2021.
Okay. All right. And then as far as As far as information or as far as the independent consultant's concerned, how long do you think it might take?
Yeah, Adrian, can you hear me now?
Hey, Gary, yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. The Zoom wasn't working, so I called in by phone. Sorry about that. On the first question about participation rates, the participation rates for other CCAs has been in the 95 to 96% range. So we've had 93 in the pro formas to maintain a conservative stance on it. What was the second question?
More, there might be some feedback, but the second question was just regarding the out date, which I think Adrian addressed.
Okay, good.
And then my last question was just how long it might take for an independent consultant to provide the data if they were to take a look at it, what your potential recommendation for was, or possibility for, I should say.
Yeah, we do, EES does peer reviews on these frequently, and the turnaround time is usually 6 to 8 weeks.
Great. I appreciate your comments there. I'm guessing that, Adrian, from a staff perspective and an independent consultant, you were thinking of someone who's independent of the entire process. Would that be using Gary and his firm, or would that be using a different consultant?
So based on the city's purchasing guidelines, we would actually go out to RFP, and we would have a go through that process, which usually takes about 2 to 3 months to get a consultant on board, and then work would commence at that point.
Yeah, and Adrian, one other comment on that. We've had a peer review done on the City of Irvine's feasibility study that we did. MRW worked on that this summer. So there has been a thorough review of what we did for Irvine. And the assumptions in Irvine are much like the ones we used for the JPA.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from my council colleagues or questions?
I still have a few more, so.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Not a problem. I know it's hard to, you can't see me, you can't tell. You know, we've been talking about this for quite some time. You know, it's unfortunate that a JPA is starting to form and we're getting down to the wires as far as getting in. I can understand how some people would be very apprehensive just because of the fact that the timeline's so short and we're still trying to understand exactly what the JPA will be. A lot of those votes have just taken place in the last few weeks. You know, as you may recall, earlier this year, I think we got a letter from Mayor Shea in Irvine, probably post the COVID pandemic starting. And then I think we got another letter either late last year or early this year. So we've had a couple. They're asking us to participate in this. I'm hoping that everybody's had a chance to read up on it. I really do believe that CCAs, whether it's this JPA or some other, a vast majority of cities are going to be a part of these in the coming years. I think that this particular JPA provides an opportunity for Lake Forest to join with other SCE cities. The cities south of us are SDG&E, so the likelihood of joining a JPA where you're dealing with the transmission lines run by two different electric companies is probably pretty small. Adrian or Gary, are you aware of any JPAs where they have had two power companies involved in the cities that have been involved in the JPA? My understanding is it's just been PG&E, DWP in LA, and then Edison, but you have any comments on that?
Yeah, generally that's correct. More recently, the Central Coast Community Energy, which used to be Monterey Bay, is usually in PG&E's territory. they recently picked up 2 or 3 cities, probably 100,000 meters on the Edison system. So
Okay.
that utility, the CCF North is serving in 2 investor-owned utility service territories.
Okay. Does that make it more challenging just with you're having to, the power is the power, but I guess it's the delivery part to it that is where the two entities come into play there.
That's correct. If you had a JPA with it served in 2 different investor-owned utility areas, you'd have to have 2 sets of rates and 2 sets of programs, and it would double the effort internally to get things going. For that reason, and given the timeline we had in Orange County, we selected just to go with 1, but it could certainly expand into the SDG&E territory at some point.
Okay. All right. Well, that's positive to hear that at least there's possibilities there, because it's, you know, I do feel like the more that are involved in this in the future, probably the better the buying power and better savings. And as long as there's some autonomy and how you're going to spend those savings, each city has that ability to make those decisions. You know, I continue to think that it's a good idea. So it's easy for me to suggest that you all hold a special meeting next week, since I won't be there to participate. I'll be enjoying a meal or something like that while you have to sit through something. But I would highly recommend that, but I'll let the rest of you make a comment before I make any motions.
Yeah, and if I might, one other comment about the January date coming up for the implementation plan. The revised JPA agreement allows cities to get out without cause, without any liability by up until March 1. So if you went ahead and joined the JPA, you'd have 2 months to see how it settled out. And if you didn't like what you saw, you could get out with no liability.
I appreciate that comment. And that's why I was asking the question about the independent consultant, because I think that would be valuable data that we could potentially be looking at as we get to that closer to that March 1 date. But it seems like in going through the RFP process and then trying to actually get the contract completed would not be possible in that, you know, what is that, 75-day window here. So.
Yeah, that's right. And again, we've had the peer review done on our analysis already by MRW. So there has been an independent review of what our work product was.
I do have a couple questions. I noticed that in the report, it said that it would, sorry, in any one of the structure scenarios, any one of the structure scenarios, it would provide a 2% savings. So what is that per customer? What is the breakdown of that? Is that what, 30 cents?
Oh, the average residential bill probably runs, $80 to $100. So a 2% savings would be, you know, probably $30 or $40 a year, rough numbers. For residential, it'd be obviously a lot more than that for your commercial and industrial load.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And then I noticed initially it does require the cities to take on some debt. Is there a possibility that the debt gets restructured or refinanced by the JPA, as some JPAs tend to do? Is that something that has happened in previous CCE structures?
There, you know, obviously the city of Irvine is committed to putting up the $2.5 million front money for this next year's operations, and up to $13 million for cash working capital for the bigger loan. Once the JPA board forms, they'd be in a position where they could look and see if there's a better deal out there for financing, assuming the JPA, the loan agreement between the JPA and the city of Irvine permits it, which I haven't looked at, but assuming it does, yeah, they could refinance if there's other options out there that look more attractive.
I'm sorry, Mayor? Mayor Metazity?
Yes,
oh, hi, I apologize. This is Mike Carroll from the city of Irvine, and I was asked to join, and I apologize if it's not in order, but I'd love to be able to answer that question for you.
Go right ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to join with Gary, just to talk to everyone a little bit. And I just want to congratulate Councilmember Dwight Robinson on a wonderful period of service and leadership of a great city. We would just say, with regard to the JPA, the way that we have it structured is that exactly as Gary said, we're taking on the in-kind cost that we've already spent. The city of Irvine's also taking on the initial seed money, and then it will also provide a collateral backstop for any additional loans that the JPA will need to take out to commence operations. But it's not requesting capital from other cities at this time.
Thank you for that, Mr. Carroll. Appreciate it. My other question was, I do struggle with this in the sense that it seems very bureaucratic to me. And it almost seems like moving in the direction of like a state-run utility, which I'm very trepidatious about. I understand giving people the choice to pick their the way that they get their power and providing options in the marketplace. But I'm curious to know, I guess, what my other council colleagues think about that. No, I just have some concerns about the red tape. There's these 5 employees that we have to hire, with classifications, and they require, this is taxpayer money. Fairly new concept to cities. Yes, Lancaster has done it, but on a larger, Lancaster's very small. On a larger scale, I don't think it's been really tried and tested very long. So the bureaucracy part is a little concerning for me. And I don't know who can answer that question, but I'm just to how I'm reading this.
Well, this is Gary Saliba again. There are larger utilities, CCAs, than what you folks would be if you formed the Orange County JPA. You'd have anywhere from 200 to 400,000 accounts, and Los Angeles and Ventura have got roughly 1 million. East Bay up in Alameda County's got 500,000. That Central Coast community energy we talked about around Monterey Bay area has got roughly 500,000. So there are significantly larger CCAs that are currently operating and are very successful. And the other thing is, I think you brought it up well, it's all about choice. And if your customers or your constituents don't want to join the CCA, they can stick with Edison. That's all part of the choice idea. But if they went with the CCA, it looks to us like they could save money on their bill, which is something a lot of people opt for.
You could also, even if you're in, if you're opted in, Mayor, you're actually able to get out as well. So if a particular, ratepayer wanted to, move out of the Orange County Power Authority, I think it's my understanding from the other ones, I think you pay like $5 or something, and then you can go back to SoCal Edison. But if I had to say, and I actually myself am a convert. I was just having some dialogue earlier today with some colleagues about it. And when I was first briefed on it, I was actually opposed to it, and I actually stopped the briefing halfway through. I also sit on SCAG as Irvine's representative, along with Wendy Buckman, and for your area. And local control has become a big item, at least on my plate, as it relates to us in Orange County, and particularly in Irvine, where we're about to get hit with 21,000 units that we're supposed to build per Sacramento. So from a local control perspective, it's been very exciting to me, and really why we kind of decided to run with it, to be able to take back the opportunity to do what we want to do locally with regard to energy and power, and give people choices. So I would say probably local control and to some degree savings, and the opportunity to provide cleaner sources of energy if people want to opt into doing that.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I'm definitely still struggling with the fact that it's very bureaucratic, and it's an additional layer of government. And yes, there will be local control, but again, you're kind of trading one thing for another. And that's where I'm really having trouble with that. My philosophy is like less government, less red tape, let's get to business. But I understand this is a unique situation and marketplace. So I'm just going to throw it to the rest of my council colleagues while I mull over this.
Mayor, if I could. Mayor, this is Mark Tettemer, if I may go ahead. I'll take that as a yes. So a couple questions. The report talks about tens of millions of dollars of capital. What for?
There's two reasons for two needs for the capital. One is $2.5 million next year to get started, and that goes for deposits to Edison, to the Utility Commission. It gets the infrastructure set up for the CTA and begins staff hiring and pays for consultants. After that, there's a cash working capital need of anywhere, it depends on how many people participate, somewhere between 8 and 15 or 16 million. And that's to cover the cash flow difference between payables and receivables for a CCA. The CCAs have to pay their bills in 30 days, and they don't get revenues for 60. So there's a 30-day lag between the revenue and expenses, and that has to be covered initially by an operating loan, or cash working capital, as we call it.
Okay, so it's not capital in the sense that we typically think we're not building something. It's essentially a tranche of money that's used for startup costs, deposits, cash on hand, but not capital in the sense of we're going to build a park or anything else. So, okay.
Correct.
No, that's correct. Yeah, about the only capital you'd need would be, we estimate $300,000 or $400,000 for infrastructure, for offices and desks and computers and that, but that'd be the only quote unquote capital expense you'd have.
Okay. And then the projected 2% savings, what did that assume in terms of the portfolio for, say, green energy, and however that mix is developed? What did it assume?
Yeah, the mix of energy we assume for the 2% is the minimum RPS, which would be about 40% green right now, going up to 60% in 2030. But if you went to 100% green, the savings are roughly the same, because the green energy and the market energy right now in the wholesale market are roughly the same. So going 100% green from the minimum RPS really doesn't cost that much more.
Okay. So here's my general view. I certainly share some of the sentiments of the mayor about adding another organization in here. I'm all for local control, so that I've been consistent and clear on over the years. I will fight for local control. But I appreciate the comments somebody made earlier about our legislative platform, but it's not as simple to me as saying you have to vote for this because you said you supported a particular plank of a platform. The devil's in the details, and so it's not as simple as all CCEs are created equal, so just say yes, and that's the end of it. There's a lot more that goes into it. I appreciate the comments about, are these the right partners? So I do have some reservations, and the other thing that is pretty clear is that if there's a way to save money, I'm all for doing that, but I'm also concerned about the tension that I see between people that are saying, we want to go green, and the comment made moments ago was it's essentially a push. There's no real difference. You're the subject matter expert, I'm not, but that wasn't my general understanding. I thought green energy was going to push rates higher. So the concept of saving money seems to be in tension with the push by others to say we want to go green. So that's the part I'm struggling with. And this is a decision we make today that's going to be around for potentially a long time. And I don't want to look back with regret, since I know I won't be here either in 2 or 6 years, but this legacy might live on. And I'd hate to find out that I pushed off the dock with an expectation of helping to save customers' monies and find out the net result is we actually increase cost. Yes, I understand people can opt out. Yes, I understand all that. But there's also the question back to the mayor's comments about staffing up and a bunch of other layers of government that I'm a little bit concerned about. I personally would support an independent because, as I commented to somebody earlier today, there's a lot of advocacy, and that's fine. But I'm looking for independence. I'm looking for somebody who has zero skin in the game, who has not a financial interest at all in any bit of this, who can objectively say, here's the body of evidence that goes before us in terms of the good, the bad. I'm sure there's some downside. It can't all be good. It's hard to imagine that a swipe of a pen and we can just put tens of millions of dollars in our pocket, but that's sort of the claim, I guess. But I'm looking for a truly independent voice who can say, not only here's the body of experience over time, but I would also say more specifically, how does this look for the city of Lake Forest? So I'm open to it, but I'm not quite sold yet on, without feeling like I have a truly independent representation as to the merits of this particular effort. I understand there may be timing issues. I'm not sure. I understand the range of cost. And so a question for the city manager, I think the low end was 49,000 to hire somebody, and then the high end was 150.
Yes, and these, we're quoting prices from a previous RFP.
Sure.
So we'd have to see what the market is now.
Okay. I guess the question, though, would any of those, I'm not trying to advocate here, but I'm just asking, would any of those fall under your authority, under potentially a sole source or even a competitive bid, but under your authority that could help expedite if need be?
We'd have to look at that.
Okay. Those are my
Councilmember, if I could, but I would just add that, part of the dialogue with the other municipalities, and, again, apologies are owed really from Irvine to you and other municipalities because of COVID and everything that took us away from really doing this in earnest. One of the things that we really looked at, and I think, I'm not sure if it came from Lake Forest per se, but the idea that we allow, not Irvine, because again, we're sort of leading the charge here and we need to, stand behind what we're saying. So we cannot withdraw. But if we could possibly structure in such a way, in which we did, for example, with Fullerton, who we've officially joined with, so we are a JPA as of November 20th, every municipality except for Irvine would have the ability to opt out, to literally withdraw for no reason by the end of March. So if that's something where you could have something, a peer review in place, but we could still consider the city of Lake Forest as part of our implementation plan, which unfortunately, I've been learning these rules as we go, has to be filed by December 31 for you to be, essentially doing this come 2022. Otherwise, we wait an entire year. But just food for thought. I take your comments very, very seriously.
Madam Mayor? Scott?
Right ahead.
Thank you. Mike, I guess this is going to be directed to you. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate you on your reelection, Mike, there from Irvine. Congratulations and welcome to the Lake Forest City Council meeting, even though you're coming in on Zoom or a phone call.
Thank you, Councilmember Voice.
Hey, so I too have a leeriness in getting involved with city that might not be a total great fit for us. So as we look at this, I'm looking at this as a cost savings, not only to the residents, but to the businesses of the city of Lake Forest. And so I'm well aware of the move that the state of California is moving to green, but I want to do it more on my timetable as someone that believes in local control. What's the obligation to us if we want to not be quite as green as Irvine?
I could answer that, sure, Council Member. So that's sort of a second thing that we wired into the agreement as you consider this, and it's a lot to deliberate. I give you that for sure. The other piece to this is that in addition to a member of the JPA saying, essentially getting buyer's remorse, right? In February, we're all sitting on the board. I've been appointed to the board, so I'll be one of the board members with the Lake Forest board member if you all decide to move forward. If it doesn't really work out, yeah, Lake Forest can opt out. Nothing happened. It's really of no moment. With regard to the other piece, which is a really important piece, council member, is yes, customer savings, consumer choice as far as the type of energy, cleaner sources of energy if a person wanted to opt in that direction. Each city can actually decide the offering of energy the mix, if you will, the choices of energy. In other words, the board cannot dictate and say to the city of Lake Forest, we will offer two options and they're all going to, one's going to be 80% renewable and one's going to be 100% renewable, and stick the city of Lake Forest. I mean, this would never happen. I mean, everybody tells me that my understanding from these other community choice energy, and I've spoken to San Diego, I've spoken to Western Riverside Council of Governments, and they talk about it as, quote, a feel-good board. It doesn't happen this way. However, just for the safeguard, which is important to you, we could not, as an entity, ever say to any city this, and dictate what that mix is going to be. We hope we'll get consensus around that, but if Lake Forest wanted to move in a separate direction, as far as the choices offered, the three or so choices that are offered to each ratepayer, that is actually within their purview. I hope that's somewhat helpful.
Okay, so I guess this question is, let me go into it. So technically, or hypothetically, Irvine could be going 100% green and Lake Forest going 75% green, and our cost per unit of electricity would be, say, a third less than Irvine. I mean, we're talking about different variations of price levels as we go into the different cities.
It's actually hardwired into the JPA. I mean, make no mistake, council member, we will definitely try to get, I'm hopeful that we could try to get choices that maybe, for example, the city, in your example, let's say the city of Irvine, there's a certain constituency that might want to choose the 100% renewable. And my understanding, just having done the research and going from being quite frankly, a naysayer to an advocate, I freely admit that, over the last 18 months. I know Councilman Robinson's been consistent. I'm getting my consistency, Councilman Robinson. But yes, that actually can be different. It's hardwired into the JPA agreement. But we kind of know that, for example, I think that's where you're going, Councilmember Voight, is the 100% renewable option that, let's say, perhaps many people in Irvine might be interested in, and maybe not many people in Lake Forest might not be interested in. That, I think we all agree, will be an option that will probably be a little more expensive per kilowatt hour than what they're currently paying Edison. But what we expect to have is this sort of base rate that everybody will get, unless they choose to do that more green, more renewable. That base rate should have some, as Gary Saliba mentioned, some modest amount of reduction.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Basically, look at it
Councilman.
this way, we're basically an order taker.
Gary, was that you trying to chime in on that?
Yeah, Councilman Carroll had a nail. When it comes time to actually launch, people like us will go around to each of the cities and say, what do you want as far as power supply goes? How much green, how much brown? We'd take orders and we'd aggregate what all the 4 or 6 cities want. We'd go out and buy en masse and then come back and chop it up the way each city wants, and each city would pay whatever the cost was for that mix that they desired.
I was actually, I would just jump in and say that I was actually surprised when Gary was advising, because I thought, and again, it's just not my expertise, right? We're going to have people to do that. And by the way, in terms of separate government, my understanding, and Gary, correct me, are we talking, how many FTEs are we talking about at this entity? Is it less than 10 at this point? Do you have a rough, just so Mayor, Matazzi and everybody knows the kind of, we're not looking at Los Angeles. With all due respect to Los Angeles, apparently has created a large government bureaucracy. That I've understood. But I think we mean to do it lean and mean, which is the Western Riverside model. So how many full-time employees? What are we talking about, Gary?
You're talking about 2 hands full, somewhere between 6, 8, 9 FTEs possibly.
But it would be 10, I think it would be 10 or less at full steam, right?
But initially, you'd probably want to have 2 or 3 people, and then at launch, you'd want to pick up another 3 or 4. And most of those people do customer service type things. They answer the phone, they have high bill complaints, they have questions about rent. It's that line of work that the TCA employees would be doing.
So Gary, those would be employees of the JPA, or they'd be employees of yours?
No, they'd be JPA employees.
So would JPA, our local Orange County JPA that we're talking about, would they be headquartered out of where?
Right there.
Well, actually, council member, do you have any availability in Lake Forest? It will not be Irvine City Hall. That much, we've kind of internally agreed. We want to have it the idea would be an independent location, council member.
Okay. So my other question is, we talk about the 52-day notice for notification of exiting the JPA, and that has to be done before March 1st, or does it have to be 52 days before March 1st?
Yeah, it seems like that there's two notification periods. One is the initial notification on March 1, and I don't have the agreement in front of me. It seems like there's a 15-day advance notice on that. You need to tell them by then. Once you're in the JPA, if you went out, there's a longer notice period.
I think what we're calling having fun internally, the timeshare rule. You get that time right, and maybe some of us have been there. I'll leave it there, but when you can actually, you purchase the timeshare, you get a chance to get out. I think it's 15 days, council member.
I'd like to ask my staff. So thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Gary. But Adrian, as you look through the documents here, do we have a 52-day notice as of March 1st, or does it have to be 52 days prior to March 1st?
So it's not 52, it's actually 15.
15.
So
Okay.
15 days prior to March 1st, 2021.
Okay, so if we do it 15 days prior to March 1st, there's no cost to the city, as according to what I heard. Is that correct, Adrian?
That is correct.
So what if Councilman Teddermer and myself are no longer on the council, and we have new councilmen that are waiting in the audience to take our dais? What if in the next 8 years and they want to exit the JPA? What's the cost to the city to try to exit that? Obviously, we get into these JPA kind of organizations, and we find it's not so easy to get out.
So at this time, I don't know any future exit costs. I think that depends on numerous factors that Gary may be able to speak to. There are options to withdraw, but it does come at cost.
Yeah. Once the JPA is up and running and you start procuring power, the JPA is procuring power on behalf of each of the cities based on what the cities want. And the general rule is that if somebody buys power for you and you went out, that's fine, but you have to hold the remaining cities harmless. So you would either take the power with you or liquidate the power and either pick up the surplus or pay the deficit.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Now, my other question is, in scenario 3, we have the city of Irvine, Huntington Beach, Fullerton, Costa Mesa, Lake Forest, Tustin, Yorba Linda, Villa Park, Laguna Woods, Santa Ana. Are these cities in negotiation with you as we speak?
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember Voights. Fullerton is, as of November 20th, we formed the entity. So right now, as we stand right now at this moment, 7:34 p.m. on December 1st, it's Fullerton and Irvine. Huntington Beach is deliberating, my understanding, next week for their approval of the JPA agreement. Of course, can't predict that, but we're obviously optimistic and that they will place a board member on the board as well. We're optimistic, obviously, about the great city of Lake Forest. Costa Mesa has asked for some things, and I think I'm not really sure what's going to happen with Costa Mesa since we're already formed with Fullerton. And there's a possibility, I think at this point, of Santa Ana and a possibility of Villa Park. But I would say Huntington Beach at this point, I know is sort of, it's been communicated to me at least that there's a lot of enthusiasm and excitement over there on the coast.
Thank you, Councilman Carroll. Back to my staff. If I'm just not so sure when it comes to voting, when you have a city that has 2 votes and we all have 1, and I'm going into cities that maybe aren't direct fits for me, is personnel, and that would be up to the board, of the discretion of the board of hiring and wages and everything?
I am not sure, Councilmember Voights. I'm not sure if the Board of Directors necessarily has a say in the staff that's being hired.
So I see that you guys have word.
Wait, I'm sorry, that's an important point. Who has a say in the hiring of a staff if the JPA doesn't?
I think my understanding is if Mayor, is it okay if I try to respond to that one?
Go ahead.
Mike Carroll, sorry. Yes, Mayor, council member. My understanding is, much like a private company, which is kind of my regular line of work, governance, is that the JPA board would go ahead and hire, I believe the C-suite essentially. In other words, the executive, the person in charge, and then perhaps the chief operating officer or something like that. And then they'd have sort of, delegated authority to go ahead and hire the rest of the, staff, like at a regular company. That being said, and Gary, I guess this is, we have to really lean on Mr. Saliba. The good news is we have many of these other CCA entities around the state, and we would be looking to them and Gary really to your all expertise on guiding us on, again, to Councilmember Voight's question, proper salaries, proper benefits, and competitive, obviously, to get great people to run this thing for us. But, the board would want to, I imagine there's some sort of staffing policy, right, that the board would have some say over beyond just hiring, if you will, the CEO and the COO, but you'd have to tell us.
Yeah, that's correct. The board will put out a solicitation to hire the CEO for sure, maybe the COO, but then they also set policy on staffing about how many, what their qualifications need to be, what the salary ranges are, so that the CEO would actually do the hiring, but he'd have guidance from the board about what his constraints were, his or her constraints.
Thank you. I have one more question, and I'll be wrapped up. So here in Lake Forest, obviously, we've been impacted, as Irvine has. It's the surprise of those new residents of those lovely new houses along the 241 in Irvine. They all had to evacuate, along with our Baker Ranch new residents. Welcome to South Orange County, Councilman Carroll. So on that note, where I was going with this is that in the last few weeks and even today, we're getting notices of rolling blackouts. Since we use the same delivery system as Edison, who's in charge of the rolling blackouts? Is it still Edison?
Yeah, Gary, would you go ahead and take that? I think we're still part of that same ISO. Yeah, I mean, again, they do the transmission, right? So Gary, how does that work?
That's correct. On blackouts and emergency situations, Edison would still be responsible for restoring power. The CCA's only obligation would be to make sure the power supply they contracted for made it into the main grid, and it's Edison's problem from there. And the types of situations you're talking about with fires and rolling blackouts would be squarely in Edison's responsibility.
So, okay, Gary, so while you're on with me, so as most of us know that the Orange County Fire Authority is trying to investigate the origin and where this last fire was, this Santiago Canyon fire that we just had. Where does the responsibility lie with a JPA that's using Edison lines to come into the city of Lake Forest or the city of Irvine that would possibly hypothetically cause a fire? Is it Edison or is it our JPA?
No, the Edison's on the hook for all that. The Edison runs the poles and the wires. That's where the problems are, and Edison's squarely responsible for that. That's a good question. That's been asked quite a bit up north with all the fires there. And the JPA attorneys up there say that the JPA has no liability. Up there, it sticks with PG&E.
Has that, Gary? It's Mike Carroll. Has that held up as far as you know in terms of any, these other entities being? Has that sort of held fast and held strong, that position?
Yeah. Yes. No, I don't know of any JPAs that have been sued for fire damage. That always goes to the owner of the wires.
I have nothing further,
Councilman
Mayor.
Boyd?
I'm done,
Okay.
Mayor. Thank you. Thank you,
you.
Gary. Thank
I do
you,
have
Mike.
one more question.
thank you.
There is an option for Lake Forest to go ahead and let the JPA form and then see what the actual results are for other cities. What, if we go that route, what bars a city from joining the JPA at a later date?
I could take that, Mayor. Nothing. That's absolutely an option within your your decision making. Unfortunately, the urgency is essentially been dictated to us by the California Public Utilities Commission and the understanding and had we not been it's amazing that we can even actually forge through this thing during a global pandemic that's hit our county pretty significantly, and we're still here talking, which is just a blessing from above. But that aside, yes, you could absolutely wait, but the way that unfortunately it works, and again, Gary, sorry, you're the expert, but if we don't include City of Lake Forest on 1231, we have to essentially list the cities that are in the JPA. If we don't do that, then CPUC says you have to wait until the following. There's only one time. The window literally opens 12/31 and closes January 1. So what it would do is we could have you join us in 2021, and what that would do is we would file you at the end of 2021. During 2022, we do all the purchasing and the organizing, and then we send out the letters saying, hey, you have an opportunity to opt out. Dear Lake Forest, Edison customer, you're moving over. Would you like to opt out? That process is a year-long process. So it would put you back to 2023. And that was sort of, just to give you a thought, that was the idea. Again, we've talked to a lot of cities and like yours that were awesome enough to get the load data so we could do this. Stanton, Placentia, Buena Park is still sort of at the outside realm that could potentially do this. Just a few other cities to name, but that was the idea behind the buyer's remorse, get out at the end of February option. But that's a great question. You absolutely can hang on, and please, no one should feel pressured at all. And that was the idea of the get out, so we could file you now, and then, if things didn't feel right, smell right, from your board member, from the communications that we give to you as a member of this, then you have every right to just, essentially pull out.
Yeah, but 15 days isn't enough for.
Oh, it's 15 days prior to March 1. So I guess, and we could even waive that too, but just on the legality, it's just, you're right. Look at it this way. It's February 15, because if there's this 15-day notice to March 1, it's February 15. It's February 13th, because February has 28 days. I apologize.
No, I understand. Okay, well, thank you for that clarification. Council colleagues, do you have any more comments or questions regarding this discussion item? Is there a motion?
Like I said earlier, it's easy for me to make a motion to give you all a meeting to go to next week, but my motion will be that you hold a special meeting, just so that the new council members or any of you who are still thinking about this want to proceed before this CPUC filing, that you have the ability to do that. So that's my motion. Like I said, I'm not trying to give you all an extra meeting and the staff, but I've been talking about it for about 3 years, and it's unfortunate that we're getting to this late date. But as was mentioned earlier, I mean, we've even had an RFP out and solicited bids, and then not move forward with collecting the data and analyzing it. So it got close and then didn't, and then got a little close and then didn't, and then fell apart for a while. And now we've got to at least a tiny bit of load data so far, but we really haven't been able to analyze it. So that's my motion, is that you hold a special meeting, so that you can consider whether or not to move forward with that. But obviously I wouldn't be a part of it.
Okay, we have a motion to conduct a special meeting for community choice aggregation with our new council colleagues. Do I have a second?
I got a point of information. I'd like to know if we have our second meeting on December 15th, would that give us adequate time to move forward if the new council wanted to move forward with this JPA?
My understanding is that you'd have to pass the resolution and then the joint powers agreement, and then have a first reading of the ordinance. And that was enough to get in, is what my understanding is. The second reading could happen on December 15th, and then you'd have met the requirements.
So we technically, as much as Councilman Robinson, as he tries to load us up with an extra meeting, do we need that extra meeting to actually consider this before the end of the year? Because if the next council comes on board and is interested in this, we could have a first reading or vote on CCA on the 15th, and then on the 22nd, we could have a special meeting to vote our second reading of it.
Yes.
Councilman Robinson, if I can make a friendly amendment.
I'm all ears. I'm just, following what were in the staff's 5 points there, and that seemed to be, I think, point number 3, that's probably how you'd need to do it, is hold a special meeting just so that you get everything in and get that first reading done on the 15th. But
and then second reading when? So
I would assume your second reading would be, maybe I'm misunderstanding, so maybe the staff can explain that. So first reading would be when, and the second reading would be when, based on what you outlined in the staff report.
Okay.
Well, we recommended December 8th as an option because that would allow you to appoint a board member. And my understanding is that the first board meeting is December 15th or the 16th or the 17th. So if you did this on the 15th, you may lose the opportunity to be part of that first meeting if you wanted to participate. As far as first reading and second reading, if you had your first reading December 8th, you could have a second reading December 15th.
So does the second reading...
Oh, sorry, it's Mike Carroll. I've been asking this, I get this question from every municipality too, y'all, and I would just say that my understanding is the second reading can actually fall over. I must have asked our council 20 times, is that okay, given where we're at? And he said, and he swears in blood that a second reading does not have to occur until 2021, and CPUC will still call that as good, just for what it's worth. Just relaying that.
Councilman Carroll, is Gary still on the line?
Yeah, Gary's on.
Gary, you've set these up before. Would that be adequate?
I agree with Mike. We've asked council this 100 times as well, and I think if you get your first reading done in this year, you have a second reading in early January, and the commission would say that's fine.
So, Councilman Robinson, My friendly amendment was to move your meeting and just re-agendize this for December 15th.
Well, if that seems like it'll work from a timetable perspective, again, I won't be here for that, so it'll be for the new council to decide, but I could support that, yes. So if that's your motion, I'll second it.
No, I'm seconding
Okay,
your,
we
as
have
a
a
friendly
motion
amendment.
for a special meeting December 15th to review community choice aggregation. We have a second. So, Madam Clerk, I believe that requires us to vote.
Point of clarification, Mayor. Point of
Let's go right ahead.
clarification. That's not a special meeting. That's our regularly scheduled meeting on December 15th. Is that correct?
And I would just like to clarify, the motion is to basically continue this item to December 15th as it's written. That's all we're doing, is continuing to the 15th to allow the new council members to participate in this discussion, basically.
Well, I think it would be a different report. It would have the documents you would need if you wanted to join attached on the 15th.
Okay. But I'm saying, but ostensibly, we're just continuing this item. There may be some additional attachments, but we're just basically deferring this conversation so the two new folks can get on board.
Yes.
Okay, since we have 4 council members, is 2-2 enough to push us over?
No.
I know that a 2-2 would not work. It'd have to be a 3-1 or a 4-0.
Okay, well, I'll call the vote. I seconded Robinson's motion.
Madam City Clerk, let's take it to a vote.
Okay, Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Teddemer.
Aye.
Councilmember Voits.
Aye.
Mayor Motazedi. Was that an aye?
That was a no.
Oh, no, okay. Motion passes 3-0 with Mayor Pro Tem absent.
3-1.
I'm sorry, 3-1.
So that motion passes, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Next agenda item, item 10, crossing guard services. Madam City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a consensus item brought forth by Councilmember Robinson to discuss crossing guards. And so we have a report for you tonight by our Deputy City Manager, Brett Channing.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. As mentioned by our City Manager, this item brought before you was a consensus item brought forth by Councilman Robinson at the October 20th, 2020 meeting. With that consensus request, Councilman Robinson was seeking the number of crossings at crosswalks that have crossing guards and wanted that data compared to the prior 2 school years. So just a little bit of background. The city provides and pays for crossing guards in several locations throughout the city. This has been in place within the city since the 1990s. The city hires a private independent company to run the crossing guard program. They're called All City Management Services Incorporated, or ACMS. The council approved a 3-year contract back in July of 2020 for these services at approximately $286,000 per year, with a total contract of just under $859,000 total. And with that contract, it was for 3 hours per day with a morning and afternoon shift. As mentioned, there's 23 crossing guards at 20 intersections throughout the city. As you can see on the screen, there are listed there, mainly nearby elementary schools. And there are 3 crossing guard location, or 3 intersections, excuse me, that have 2 crossing guards at that location. Saddleback Valley Unified School District, back in early September, their board approved a hybrid model for reopening their schools due to the coronavirus pandemic. And with that, they created a AM and PM session for their elementary schools, which meant that there's children coming for a session in the morning, and then they'd be leaving midday, and there would be a new session of children coming for the afternoon. As a result, that created the need for having crossing guards present at these locations in the middle of the day, which, as mentioned, our contract that was approved in July only had crossing guards there in the morning and afternoon. So with that resulted added hour and a half in the middle of the day, there resulted in a net increase to the contract of about $81,000 or 9.5%. We're currently in communication with Saddleback Valley Unified School District about having them assist financially with that extra cost that is burdened onto the city. So as requested by Councilman Robinson, the staff approached ACMS about doing a count at all of the different intersections throughout the city. They performed that count over 3 different weeks, 3 days during the week of November 9th and 3 days during the week of November 16th. Because they don't typically do that count of crossings, unfortunately, they did not have that data for the prior 2 years as requested by Councilman Robinson. And I'm going to go over that data, but just wanted to preempt that with certainly the numbers have been impacted as a result of COVID-19 with a large percentage of students doing at-home learning. So broke it down into 3 different categories. These are the different intersections in the city where there's a crossing guard present that's averaged under 5 children over the 6 days and crossing for each of those sessions. You have an AM, the midday, and then the PM. So all these are 9 in total. You can see 1 at Foothill Ranch, 2 near Gates Elementary, 2 near Lake Forest Elementary, 2 near Olivewood, and 2 near Santiago. And all these, again, averaged less than 5 children crossing over the 6 days. Then there were 7 different crossing locations, intersections, where there were averaged between 5 and 15 students that crossed the intersections over the 6-day period. These had 2 near Foothill Ranch, 1 near Gates, 1 near La Madera, 1 near Lake Forest, 1 near Portola Hills, and 1 near Rancho Cañada. And then there is a section of intersection 7 as well that averaged 15 or more crossings over the 6-day period. And 2 of these were near La Madera, 1 near Lake Forest, 2 near Portola Hills, 1 near Rancho Cañada, and 1 near Santiago. And in the staff report, you saw all this data laid out to you for you in a table. So to warrant a crossing guard, it's not just as simple as picking a location, but it also requires the balance of need and resources. Typically, it requires an engineering study to warrant these locations, and the California Manual on Traffic Control Devices provides conditions to support a crossing guard. The general rule of thumb is that there needs to be at least 40 or more school crossings in a 2-hour period. Which of those 2 hours, they don't necessarily have to be in consecutive 2-hour period. And in addition to that rule of thumb, there's other factors that play into determining the crossing guard locations, which you see here on the slide, such as the proximity to crossing guard location relative to the school, the speed, the conflicting traffic volumes and turning movements, and the intersection controls, whether it's an uncontrolled intersection, stop controlled, or a signal controlled. There's some other issues to consider when it comes to crossing guard as well. While the city is not statutorily required to establish and fund crossing guards, failure to do so could expose the city to some liability. There's a couple examples of other cities recently where there was an accident at an established but unattended crosswalk near a school where a child was hit, in one case killed, and the city's paid out multi-million-dollar lawsuits as a result. So the council has a few options they could consider as part of this item. We could make no changes to the crossing guard program, or the council could decide to study some intersections for crossing guard removal. If that were the case, we would staff recommends that you use an independent traffic engineer. And we've been quoted that to do this, it'd be approximately $2,000 to $2,500 per intersection for that study. And with the study, we would certainly bring that back to the city council to look at the data and give us direction to move forward with removing of that crossing guard at that location. And with the study, we would also need direction from the council whether or not you wanted to look at all intersections or just a select few. And if you wanted to do that study now or wait until the 2021-2022 school year, when hopefully we are past this COVID-19 pandemic and the schools are back to more of a normal schedule. Now, based off of the criteria that I mentioned in the previous slide, staff preliminarily looked at ACMS's data as well as the other criteria, and we felt like there's about 5 intersections in the city that we would want to look at more closely if the council decided just to look at a select few at this moment. And just a reminder that this is not something that's been budgeted, so if the council wanted to move forward with the study, it's something that would need a council appropriation, which we could bring back during the mid-year budget. So just in summary, crossing guards do provide a safety and to provide safety for children and is used for liability reasons. The data from ACMS does show that there are low volume at several different crossing locations throughout the city. And there are specific guidelines that exist with regards to warranting crossing guards that we would want to look to before removing any crossing guards. And certainly at this moment, council direction is needed for any next steps. And that ends my presentation. Here to answer any questions, and also we have Tran, our traffic engineering manager, who's available for questions.
Mr. Channing, colleagues, I need to call for a 10-minute recess. Are we okay with that?
What you say?
Or we deliberate?
Oh,
Sure.
Recess. She wants a recess. Yeah, Mayor, how long were you thinking?
10 minutes, please.
Okay,
Thank you, Mayor.
so we'll go ahead and recess for
Okay,
10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you for that 10-minute recess, colleagues. All right. I believe we left off at the deliberation point of the.
Hold on, Nikki. Let's get all back on the dais.
Sure. Sorry, I couldn't really tell who was on there. If I may just ask that we put up the last slide of the presentation, please.
Can you see that, Mayor?
I just wanted to leave up the summary. Okay, so I believe the options were to keep things as is or do a study. Do any of my colleagues have discussion items or anything they want to regarding this?
Mayor, we've put up the council options now on the slide.
Thank you. I do see
Yes,
that.
Madam Mayor, I have a few comments and questions.
Go ahead, Councilmember Robinson.
Thank you very much. So the first question is regarding the increase due to the midday or the mid-morning edition because of the hybrid schedules. It's 81,000. What time period does that cover? So that 81,000, is that just the fall semester? Is that a portion of the fall semester? Is that the 2021 school year? If you could provide a little detail there, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, Councilman Robinson. That is for the remainder of this school year, the 2020-2021 school year. So that's with the assumption that this midday shift would be in effect through the end of May.
Okay, so that's the addition for the midday shift. Was there some cost savings when schools hadn't opened earlier in the year? And does that offset that $81,000 increase, or is that inclusive of the cost savings from the lack of any schools, the first few weeks of the semester?
That is inclusive of the savings from starting about 4 weeks later than the school year was supposed to. So the cost was actually closer to 117,000. So the net cost was that 81 after the savings from not starting at the beginning of the school year.
Okay, and the 81,000 is just based on the assumption that this hybrid schedule will go through the May, June 2021 end of the school year. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. And then if this were to continue, we all expect that it won't, and we're very hopeful and optimistic. But if this were to continue, then that same 117,000 that you referenced would continue for each subsequent school year if this became more of a regular pattern. Again, we all hope that it won't, but I'm just trying to look at worst case scenario. So is that correct?
It would probably be slightly more as the hourly cost for crossing guards increases in years 2 and 3 of the contract by about $1.50 an hour. So it would be close to that, but it would be slightly more.
Okay, very, very fair enough. I appreciate that. With regard to the crossings that were done, I'm guessing that we don't have a whole lot of data there, so we don't know if there was an adult present at certain percentages of those crossings that we observed on the, what was that, the 9th and the 16th, the weeks of the 9th and the 16th?
We had asked them strictly to count the children, so I'm sure there were adults present, but they did not count them.
Okay, all right. I'm just trying to get, a feel for, exact, some of the crossings, the very low number, which we all know is most obviously pandemic related. But I'm trying to figure out, how many are crossing without an adult, and, also taking into account that, there's a certain number of crossings that occur every Saturday and Sunday as well, when school's not in session, and, they may not be very young children, but there's clearly, my own kids are crossing at Serrano next to, I forget what that street is, but next to Rancho Cañada, and they're doing that on weekends. So there's crossings there all the time. There's no guards in place during those times. So just looking at the costs and the number of crossings right now, and it seems pretty significant. If a study is the only way to do it, or if that's what makes the most sense, if that's what you're advising for liability purposes and things like that, I can appreciate that. And, I think it does make sense to study at least some of the intersections, probably not all, because you're trying to save money. I don't know how much sense it makes spending, $50,000 studying all the intersections when some of them clearly, there appears to be a need for a crossing guard even now. It's getting close to that, 40 per 2 hour period. So with some of those, so those are just my comments to at this point. I do think, long term, it probably would make sense to try to put it in the scope to get some count at some, intervals. You mentioned that the contractor doesn't have counts going back in previous years, and they just basically did this per our request at this point. I think some way of doing that obviously doesn't interrupt the operation of what they're doing, some sort of, count clicker or something like that, so that we at least get some general data periodically. I think that'd be really beneficial to put in the scope of any future contracts, if there were to be future contracts. So, and at this point, I do think that it makes sense to study at least some of the intersections.
Mayor Metaxity, Councilman Voights.
Go ahead, Councilman Boyce.
In your PowerPoint presentation, you mentioned the deaths that were in the other cities. One being Anaheim. The city wasn't found liable for that. They paid out on that, but the fact is that it was a lack of crossing guard there that was usually there. It wasn't something that was really the fault of the city per se.
That's correct. That was for a lawsuit in which a child crossed earlier in the morning before the crossing guard typically arrived. And so there was a lawsuit saying that the crossing guard should have been there earlier when the children were going to school for a free breakfast program.
I think this is kind of a slippery slope because of the fact that we have wages that are continuing to go up. Obviously, we get $1 increase, $1.50 increase next year, and then another $1.50 increase. So the fact is that this is going to be a rising tide. And so my question will be to council. What's the responsibility of the city? I've been to the League of Cities event where some of the Democratic cities in Northern California were actually pulling out of the crossing guard business.
Yes, Madam Mayor, council members, we actually do not have a legal obligation to provide for crossing guard services. That is not established by statute or by case law. We do have an obligation to ensure that there isn't a dangerous condition of property. The two lawsuits that you see on the other issues slide here, Anaheim and Apple Valley, both dealt with dangerous conditions issues. Both intersections had been brought to the attention of the cities in Anaheim and Apple Valley, and measures were not taken to ensure safety. So again, we don't have the affirmative obligation. Once, however, we've provided for crossing guards, in order to reduce the services or to remove them, we really should go through certain steps, including the study, to ensure that we are protecting the lives of those kids that are crossing for school.
As a representative for the city, the citizens of the city, including the children, I feel like we have a partnership that is a joint partnership where we work together with another municipality, and that's being the Saddleback Unified School District. But there's times where I hear from my staff the lack of response that we get from Saddleback Unified School District as being a partner with us, whether it be traffic inflow, ingress, degress from the schools. This was Saddleback Unified School District Were they responsive? Did they notify the city of Lake Forest that they were adding a second tier before they hired or put the crossing guards out?
We were made aware. We were made aware of options they were considering, but they never came to the city and said this was the option that we're moving forward with, and as a result, it's going to result in a net increase to your contract for crossing guards. That was never brought to the city by the school district.
So in gross, it was over $100,000 increase. The Saddleback Unified School District just thought that they had a blank check to write against us. That's just infuriating to me when you're in partnership with a entity and they just write checks at will. It doesn't show a good partnership in fact that the city of Lake Forest in having the development we've had and the flack that some of us here on city council have taken because of the growth of our city has blessed Saddleback Unified School District immensely to the tunes of tens of millions of dollars. And so I think that, you know, what we've done for them and the lack of response that we get or respect that we get, that, you know, we're partners with them and they don't treat us that way, it's just disheartening to me. The last thing I'd like to say is that I do agree that we should look at possibly moving to a study, as Councilman Robinson said, the study and see where the numbers are. But the fact is, we as a city, because of the pandemic, we've lost revenue because our businesses are so struggling. And Saddleback Unified School District, you know, they've gone forward with their pandemic program where the kids are studying from home, and they have a hybrid to where some of the kids are welcomed back, but they've never really lost that much revenue because the fact is that they've been getting the same dollar amount whether the kids are online learning or at school learning. So it just seems that we should move forward with a study. So I agree with that, and I hope that in the future that they would work with us as partners in the education of our children and the safety of our children. But I know that one of the things that I was advocate for when my daughter was at Serrano Junior High was another resource officer for the district. And I know that the resource officer that is paid for by the city is 95% of the time at El Toro High School, leaving all of our elementary schools and Serrano Junior High without a law enforcement personnel there. So I made a suggestion that we talk to and negotiate with Saddleback Unified School District and maybe possibly bring another resource officer that would be the resource officer for the elementary schools and the junior high. And then we could have a dedicated resource officer at the high school where 90% or 85% of the problems are. But I think that it's just that lack of response is saying they say they can't afford it. Well, there's times where they don't consider what we can afford or can't afford. I have nothing further.
Thank you,
Mayor, this is
Councilmember
Councilmember
Voigt.
Teddimer.
Right ahead.
Mayor, this is Councilmember Teddimer. May I speak on this item?
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you. Can you go back to the recommendations or the options slide? Thank you. So I'm going to make this in what might be a long and winded motion, but to clarify, so I don't think doing anything now would be of much value because we're in the middle of a pandemic, so the numbers won't be all that helpful. City manager, I don't ever remember, channeling my prior tour of duty, I don't ever remember a study being done. If it has, do you recall if it was and when?
No, I don't believe we've ever done a study. We have pulled crossing guards, but it was when a school closed.
Yeah. So I'm in favor of a study. What I don't particularly care for about this particular language, it says study intersections for crossing guard removal. I would remove that last part. Let's study the intersections and see where it takes us. But I don't think there's any value in doing that study now. So my recommendation or motion would be that we put money in the budget to do a study of all the intersections. I know some may not be as helpful as others, but that we put money in the budget for the coming fiscal year with the intent that it to be studied probably in, I don't know, starting in September timeframe, to start doing counts and having somebody look at. That assumes, of course, that we're sort of post-pandemic and we're back to a relatively normal scenario. So my motion is that we have money put in the budget for a study, and this item be brought back at whatever time appropriate. Maybe it's in the August timeframe to consider that study, or maybe we need more time. I'm sorry, I don't mean to, maybe that's not early enough. I'll let staff decide, with the intent that we could start doing some counts September timeframe. And that's my motion.
Councilman Teddemer, if I can make a friendly amendment to that, I'll second that. I'd like to discuss put it in the budget for the mid-year budget discussion, so we don't put it, so we kind of put it up. And I too like the idea of, I'm not saying that we're removing, because I think that we should just do a study of the crossing guards, and so I concur with Councilman Teddemer. I just think that we could put it in the June, the mid-year budget discussion.
So the mid-year budget starts in March.
In
So
March.
you'd like to talk about this in
Yeah.
March for funding for
Yeah, and that way it'll be in
September.
the funding.
But before we move to a vote, I'd like to make a comment or two.
Mayor,
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Yes.
All right. I do think it's a slippery slope to propose potential removal of crossing guards. I do think, regardless of who holds the bag, someone needs to be responsible for protecting children at crossing guards, crosswalks. And we can go back and forth on but currently it's the city. But I do think we need to set up some parameters with SVUSD so that they're not making unilateral decisions that affect our budget. So if I'm not mistaken, it sounds like of the new hybrid approach or model that SVUSD rolled out, they unilaterally release crossing guards without notifying the city. Is that correct?
That's correct in the sense that they had their board meeting where this decision was made. It was not brought to the city for any input with regards to that decision. We had conversations with their staff leading to that board meeting about the different options they're considering, but it was never then brought back to the city with any consideration with regards to the cost that we would have to be paying due to the increased hours for crossing guards.
Okay, then maybe this is a question for our legal counsel. We developed some parameters with SVUSD so that this doesn't happen again. We are in a very tight under very tight budgetary constraints because of the pandemic. And for something like this to happen, I think it doesn't bode well for the partnership between the city and SVUSD. So what can we do as far as contractual or parameters between SVUSD and the city for the crossing guard increase or decrease?
Yes, Madam Mayor. As far as options that arise from the law, there really isn't much to do. This is simply a negotiation, or better said, a conversation that needs to happen between staff and electeds, between the two agencies. The school district, unfortunately, is within its rights to do what it has done. I think that the comments made are accurate in terms of what that means for our relationship, but there isn't a legal remedy per se when it comes to the cost that we incur for the increased crossing guard responsibility. This is a conversation that needs to happen between the two agencies.
Okay, yeah, because I want to prevent something like that from happening again, where there's unilateral decision being made that affects so that seems like we can amend the motion to add that as a topic to address with SVUSD, but I would like to do that. Like the suggestion of Councilmember Teddemer, that to have a study, but, it's not necessarily for removal, but to see, the efficacy of crossing guards at certain crosswalks. So I could support that, but I would make an amendment to the motion to also create some parameters with SVUSD for the future, not having them make unilateral decisions without notifying the city.
As the maker of the motion, I guess I'm not quite sure what the operational part of that is. We have, I think, had some luck in the past with an ad hoc meeting. And so maybe if there are two council members that want to meet with two of their board members, if there's some issues we need to talk through, that may be a better venue to do it. I'm thinking out loud. And we still have time to have those conversations and see if they'd be on board with that. That'd be an ask of us to them. So Mayor, I don't know if that works for you, that we proceed with the motion as presented, but that we also ask staff to explore an ad hoc discussion on any and all issues.
Yeah, I think that's fair then. Okay, yeah, we'll keep that as a separate carve out.
And I thought I was maybe hearing that you'd like to be on that ad hoc.
Did I just volunteer myself? I don't know. I might have. I guess we can discuss who would be on the ad hoc at a different juncture, but.
Yeah, the first thing is they
so
have to agree we're going to do it.
Right. Well, so back to the motion then, for what I understand is that we want to move forward with a, that's pretty much what I know as the motion, and I don't know who seconded, but I think we had a second.
Councilman Robinson, or Councilman Voights.
So I think to summarize, the idea is that we would come back, money would be allocated either in the mid-year, whenever appropriate, and that staff would come back to us with an opportunity to presumably select somebody, or city manager could select somebody to do a study with budget money. So you can probably say it better than I, so I'll defer if that's not clear. Okay, so that's the motion. I believe that's the second, if that's consistent.
And just for a point of clarification, we're not identifying which intersections are we going to do right now, so we'll just get a bid back for, and then I would assume that Councilman Teddemer, we're taking probably the lower end of those and studying those lower end.
Well, my thought of this, let's put money in the budget to look at all of them, okay. And we can always trim it later based on a thorough conversation at the time we need to make it.
I'm good with that. So the second is good with the first. We'll call for the vote.
Actually, I have a couple of comments, hopefully, before we vote, if you wouldn't mind, Madam Mayor.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so first of all, I mean, I'm supportive of the motion. I think that it makes sense to budget to study, try to figure out exactly how many crossings are occurring. And like I said earlier, I also think that we should include it in the scope with the contractor, that they do a periodic number count for us as well. It wouldn't be as reliable as a study by an independent contractor, but at least we'd have something on a semi-regular basis. But the real reason why I brought this up is mainly when you're looking at these figures right now, I think that we need to be very focused on the fact that, now, am I understanding correctly, staff, that it's 286,000 plus 81,000 added for this particular calendar year?
That's correct.
Okay, so just to put this in context, I mean, we're spending like close to $370,000, and about a third of these crossings, if I'm understanding the numbers correctly, in the, again, the two time frames that were studied, so we don't know exactly that it's the entire year, but that in about a third of these crossings, there's fewer than 5 in a day. Am I understanding that correctly, Mr. Channing?
It was an average of 5 per session, so that could have been up to 15.
5 per session. So 15 per day then. So 3 sessions, 15 per day, is that accurate?
Yes, at the max for that first section of groups.
But there were lower ones.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, but so we have about a third of them that have, 15 crossings or less per day. And if you just look at the math on that, roughly 370,000, we're spending $18,000 a corner per year, or we're spending about 16,000 per corner. And you start looking at it, and we're basically paying $5 for every time that person crosses the street with the stop sign. So it's very significant. And, some of these, I just don't think make sense. I mean, if you look at like the Gates Elementary, Los Alisos and Muirlands on the 9th, there's 0. There's a person standing there or sitting there, whatever they are, and they need to be there. I don't fault the person in any way, but there's 0 crossings and the person's sitting there all day long. All right. I guarantee you that there's just as many, if not more, because it can't be less than 0 on a Saturday or Sunday, and there's no one sitting there. So that's really what I was trying to get at. I mean, obviously, Councilmember Teddemer, your focus on the long term is exactly where we need to be. But in the short term, I mean, this doesn't make any sense at all. We're funding a pretty significant amount for, a series of locations. This particular slide has, 9 different, basically corners, 9 different places where there are guards, and there's very few crossings. And again, we don't even know whether some of these are crossings with their adult. It could be with a parent, could be with a guardian who's crossing with them. And, how much is that necessary? Again, it's not going to happen on a Saturday or Sunday. It's not going to happen during the holidays because there won't be any crossing guards there, but there's still people crossing intersections all the time. So, I think that we really need to look at that. I don't know what can be done about it, when we're already almost halfway through the semester, but, we do have another, semester in a few weeks where we're going to be spending this kind of money on places where it just doesn't make any sense at all. So that's really why I brought this up in the first place. I'm glad we're headed with a long-term strategy, but on the short term, I still think something needs to be done. So,
Mayor, if I could.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments, Councilmember Robinson. I guess the thing, though, is these are pandemic influence numbers. So I'd be concerned that we would contemplate a decision based on something which I think is probably low for pandemic reasons. So we're not really getting a real snapshot. I'm not saying the numbers are going to jump to 50 a day by any stretch, but I appreciate your support for the idea that we need a long-term look during normal operations. But I think it's all on the table, and we'll have a good conversation during the discussion when all these are looked at in greater detail. And I'm surprised, but we've never done this before, so it's a good time to do it.
So,
yeah, I guess kind of where I'm at is, when we closed down portions of City Hall, we actually had to furlough certain employees as well because there was nothing for them to do. And that's essentially what's happening, at least with these particular, like I said, roughly 9 corners. There's essentially nothing to do. It would be like paying someone to sit in the senior center right now with no seniors there, right? That would seem ludicrous to us. Not that we don't care about the individuals who that were working in the senior center. We wish that it could stay open. I wish there were kids crossing every single day because the schools were open, but it's just not the case. And so, like I said, there's somebody sitting at this corner for 5 hours. They must be bored out of their mind. Hopefully they're getting through a lot of books because, they have absolutely nothing to do. So, and it seems like we should have a response. The school district should have a response to situations like this where it doesn't make any sense. I mean, on a holiday, there won't be a crossing guard out there. There could still be kids crossing. They're just not going to school, right? But we all recognize that, hey, that's a day where we don't have a crossing guard. I mean, at this point during the pandemic, there are kids that just are basically at home or their parents are driving them and they're not crossing, yet we're still paying for the crossing guard. And, you know, I get what the mayor's saying about, you know, we need to be focused on the safety aspect. Somebody does. I completely agree. But we draw that line where we say, you know, before this point in the morning, Monday through Friday, and after this point in the afternoon, we pull the crossing guard out, even though there's still people that cross. You know, we have to make those determinations. It's possible that, you know, someone could be, you know, injured in an accident at 6 p.m. at night, but we don't have crossing guards at that time because that's just not something that we've ever done. You know, it could avert an accident at some point, but so we all have to draw that line. And that's really been my frustration, is that during this pandemic, the numbers have been so low, and yet we've continued to fund, and not just fund, but we're spending extra, and a significant amount extra. I mean, the 81,000 is 9.5% based on a 3-year contract. But all those costs are being wrapped up into 1 year, and including savings from the first few weeks where there was no activity at all. So, you know, it's a very significant number. And, you know, we're always talking about how tight the budget's going to be moving forward. And, you know, we can excuse lots of different expenses for very good reasons. But, you know, every single time we're spending money when it doesn't necessarily make sense, we're pulling away from something else that can be just as important. So, you know, like I said, I support the motion. Just the reason why I brought this up was the short term. I really wish there was something that we could do about it, and I'm disappointed that there's not. So.
So
You have the floor.
well, yeah, thank you. Well, did you want to make a motion, Councilmember Robinson, to remove some of these crosswalks that are very low traffic? Or
Well,
you,
why don't you focus on the, sorry, I don't mean to give direction, but I think maybe we just focus on the motion that we have, and then before we move on to the next item, we can just talk about that other part so that we don't blur the two. I don't want to make it challenging for anyone, so.
Sure, sounds good. Okay, so were there any other comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to correct, you know, Councilman Robinson, it's 80, it's actually, if you round it up for, it's $82,000 in increased cost, if you round it up just a little bit, and rounding, because it was 81.6, so $82,000 increase, but that's with the break that they had with no school in the beginning of the semester. But it was, if you take in the fact that if it wasn't for the break, it would be over $110,000 that they increased it on us without even notifying us that they were doing that. That's the problem I have. And you look at these numbers, and I've actually stopped by and talked to some of the crossing guards, and they cross more adults and senior citizens than they do kids. So they're out there protecting the public, but they're not kids under 5. They're most of the crossings that are done by adults, senior citizens, and dog walkers.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Okay, I think we should take it to a vote now for this. All right, so the motion is to do a study for the crossing guard services. And then of course we'll see what that study entails when it's completed. And we have a second, I believe, on that, but Madam Clerk, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, we do. The second was made by Councilmember Voights.
Okay, thank you. So let's go ahead and take that to a vote.
Okay. Councilmember Robinson. Councilmember Robinson, can you hear us?
Sorry, aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Teddemer.
Aye.
Councilmember Voights.
Yes.
Mayor Motazedi. Madam Mayor? May I have your vote?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can now. Was it
I
a
voted yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, motion passes 4-0 with Mayor Pro Tem James absent.
Thank you. Councilmember Robinson, did you want to, I guess, discuss further the getting rid of some of the crosswalk guards at low traffic areas, or maybe bring that as a consensus item?
Mayor Motazzi, if I could just jump in real quick. Just a point
Yes,
of clarification for this year. As mentioned, if the council were to want to look to reduce crossing guards just this school year, that is something that could be done temporarily per our contract. And as I mentioned in my report, there were about 5 intersections that our traffic engineering manager had just looked at the different criteria that we went over earlier that may be worth looking at for this year only if the council desired.
So that would be my recommendation, is just that we look at those 5 intersections. Hopefully the study could be done relatively quickly, and there'd be some cost savings if it justified pulling the crossing guards from those locations. Again, not because we're trying to cut costs, but just because it doesn't make sense in some of these cases. I think those 5 are probably, good examples of that. They're probably the best examples where there's just so few crossings. There's probably just as many on a Saturday or Sunday. And, by children of similar ages, I'm speculating obviously, but, so I think it'd be worth studying those and, potentially cutting some costs in places where it doesn't make sense to keep the guards during the pandemic.
How do we want to bring that to an agenda? Madam City Manager, do we need a consensus, or is that something that we can bring up now because of the pandemic?
Someone would just need to make a motion to that effect, and you could vote to direct us to do a study of those 5 intersections and bring it back to the council for further action.
Yeah, that's my motion, Madam Mayor.
Second that. Let's take it to a vote, Madam City Clerk.
Madam Mayor, may I ask a question, please?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. So we're talking about doing a quick study, so we're looking at pandemic numbers, and I guess I'm concerned that we're not really getting a full measure of what's going on. The intent here would be, and just a question for you, Councilmember Robinson, that it's COVID, there's not enough of you using it, so we're going to shut that down, and we'll pick it up again in the next school year under quote-unquote normal operations. Is that what you're contemplating or anticipating?
Correct. Yeah, that would be the expectation, that right now it just doesn't justify it whatsoever. And so it would pick back up once school resumed to its normal schedule. And then based on the previous item that we voted on, a study would be done next fall that would have, more traditional numbers. And then you all could make a decision at that point whether to continue. But if school resumed in September, then all the corners, all the crossing guards that are currently being utilized would resume to their normal levels. This would just be looking at these 5 intersections for the potential of a temporary removal, just because they don't really have much to do at this point. There's a cost involved, but there's very few crossings.
May I ask a question?
Does that clarify your question, Mr. Teddemer?
It does, but it leads to another one. Thank you. So to legal counsel, what is your sense of process here? I think you sort of alluded to it earlier, but maybe you could talk a little bit about the process. Can we just pull them and say, we're done, thank you very much? Or how would that work from a notification, et cetera? What's your expectation?
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council, the process here is going to be very important to ensure that we can avoid liability and take advantage of the immunities that exist in the government code. The first step, of course, is a study that can be done by our traffic engineer. What's going to drive that study are the warrants in what's called the MUTCD, which we've seen as part of the staff report. Based on the numbers that we're seeing right now, these intersections currently aren't warranted for crossing guards, but a detailed study will give the council the facts and the findings necessary to make a conclusion that we can pull crossing guards. Now, if the study determines that that is the case, then you wouldn't want to just immediately pull the crossing guards. There would have to be, or there should be, some kind of notice process given to those students and those families, however few they are, who are using the crossing guard service, right? The cases where agencies have been found liable involved expectations of crossing guards being at a location that weren't there. And so you'd want to engage in at least a 2 or 3 week process of giving notice, handing out flyers, going to the schools, informing people that there wouldn't be crossing guards at these intersections going forward. I think if those steps are completed, then we insulate ourselves very well from liability going forward.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I have concerns about it. I'm not sure timing-wise, by the time we get somebody on board, study's done, we know that process, I don't know where we would end up. So I'd probably rather understand the timing aspects of if we did all that, and do we get anywhere anyway? Because this school year's over, I'm making it up, I don't know. But we could spend time, staff time, consultant time, whatever it is, doing work and going through some process, and June 1, by the way, they're going to end tomorrow. And it's like, yeah, they were going to end anyway, plus or minus. So I don't know, timing-wise, is there anything there?
I can let Tran, our traffic engineering, talk in terms of timing, but I just did some rough numbers just to give you an idea, and it's about approximately $2,000 per month in terms of a cost to the city moving forward. So let's just say we are able to remove a crossing guard starting February 1st. Those 4 months of savings would be about $8,000. If it ended up being March, then it'd be $6,000 worth of savings for the rest of the school year. So that just gives you at least an idea in terms of cost, but I'll let Tran talk about the timing.
Thank you, Councilmember Teddemer. The timing would be, if we could keep it at the 5 locations, that would be approximately $10,000. That would be under the authority of our Director of Public Works, which we could get a contract agreement going pretty quickly. But we are upon winter break coming up, and so we probably wouldn't do a study until sometime in January. Again, we have to understand that we have to figure out how many days we want to do it to get a good average. Make sure that those locations are good locations for us. And then once we get the study, it's going to take us about approximately 2 to 3 weeks for us to analyze it and bring it back to City Council. So I would say probably March timeframe is when we will be able to provide some information back to you.
So my understanding that we would spend 10 to save 10? Do I understand that right? Is that?
So I was saying about $2,000 per month per crossing guard. So if you were removing 5 for, to do that math real quick, for 2 months, then that'd be $20,000 of savings, but you'd be spending 10 to study it. So the nexus would be $10,000 in that case if we save 2 months worth of crossing guards for those 5 intersections.
And that would be, and those would be pandemic numbers.
Correct.
Thank you.
I have a question for staff. You guys mentioned early on that we talked about Saddleback Unified School District being notified that we were upset with the notification that they were adding crossing guard hours to our city budget. Who talked to the school district about possibly negotiating them paying the excess of that would cost?
That's been myself and Assistant City Manager Neves. We've been in communication with their Assistant Superintendent with regards to that cost.
Have they been responsive to you, either of you?
We have been in communication with them a few different times. While the process has taken longer than we would have liked to get to this point, we still don't have a number from them in terms of what they'd be willing to pay. At the moment, we're providing them the contract amendment and bills received for the first few months of the school year, and then they're going to come back to us. They're going to go to their board and come back to us with what they're willing to assist us with.
Well, wouldn't they be willing to help in the total cost of the added costs to the crossing guards?
He mentioned that he would like to be a partner and help out with that cost. To what extent, we don't know.
So back to the motion made by Councilman Robinson and seconded by Mayor Matazity. That would be a temporary fix for this year, but the crossing guards next year because I'd like to have a full study done beginning of next year at what our rate is of crossing. So that would be, go back to the original. I could support that as long as we go back to the original, so we know, get a firm number there. While we're talking school, I think that I'm privileged to ask, what is the cost of our resource officer for the school, Saddleback Unified School District, that's allocated towards the school district?
The cost of a deputy sheriff, so about $250,000.
So, at the end of this council meeting, I'm going to ask for consensus for you guys to bring back the number of how much the Kids Factory is costing us. That's advertised and run through Saddleback Unified School District. And you're talking about the Saddleback Unified School District keeps talking about declining enrollment. That's why they don't want to build new schools. Not thinking like the city of Irvine or the Irvine Unified School District were saying, build it and they'll come. In Irvine, they're willing to build new schools, and those new schools flourish. I think that we had the potential here with the amount of houses here. We could have possibly had new schools and had a younger and flourishing community of young people. My disagreement goes with that, but I think that I support the motion to look into this for this school year, and whether it be 4 weeks or 6 weeks, I think it's notifying the Saddleback Unified School District that we want to be in partnership with them, but they've got to work with us, not against us. So, Mayor?
Mayor Matazity, you have the floor.
Thank you. Sorry, there's a delay, I think. Or we were in this topic, but I think we were going to vote.
So I think we have
I've lost track.
a motion and a second for Councilmember Robinson's recommendation that a short study be done to look at a select group of low participation intersections and bring that back to council for further direction.
Okay, yes, thank you. Sorry, things went off the rails there. I lost track. Yes, that is the motion. We have a second. Let's go ahead and take that to a vote.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Teddemer.
No?
Councilmember Voigt.
Yes.
Mayor Matazity. Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes 3-0 with Mayor Pro Tem absent. Sorry, 3-1.
Okay, great. Next topic.
While we're on that topic, Mayor, may I have a moment? Mayor?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go
I'd
ahead.
like to get consensus as we're ending this part of the meeting. I'd like to get consensus and just bringing back the numbers at Kids Factory. Is that something I can get consensus on, getting the numbers of what the students that are there and the amount it's costing us? Okay.
Are you talking about bringing it back?
No,
as
no,
an
just,
agenda item, or
I just want the numbers
Okay.
and bring back a report. I mean, tell me what the numbers are, what's it costing us. And,
Okay, I mean, that could be put in the weekly report, or is that something I'm
Yeah,
trying to figure out, is it coming?
You know, it's just because we're talking about schools, I thought I'd bring it up, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying, is it sufficient for them to put it in the weekly, or
Yeah.
is it something? Yeah, okay. I support
I'm
that.
supportive of that.
Okay, yeah, me too. All right, now we move on to final items, items number 11 through 19. Item 11 is resolution recognizing our outgoing council member, Mr. Dwight Robinson.
I'd like to move that item and recognizing our past council members.
I will second that.
Great. Madam City Clerk, please call roll.
Councilmember Robinson.
I will commend myself.
Councilmember Tedemer.
Aye.
Councilmember Voight.
Yes, and I compliment you too, yes.
And
Thank
Mayor
you.
Motazedi.
Aye, thank you for your service, Councilman Robinson.
Thank you.
Motion passes 4-0.
Item 12, comments by outgoing council member Dwight Robinson. Madam City Manager, do you want to introduce the item?
Thank you, Mayor. This item is an opportunity for Councilmember Robinson to make any comments now that it is his last meeting and he has concluded his service as a member of the City Council for the City of Lake Forest.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor and City Manager. First, I feel like I need to apologize. It may seem like I was trying to get an extra day into my term by extending this meeting past midnight. Please rest assured that was not my plan. So I apologize that the two items that I agendized took so long, but I really appreciate your patience. Just to start with, you know, when I look back on the 8 years that I've served, I believe that I'm leaving the city better than I found it. And I think that's what you need to ask yourself with everything you do. And so I'm very proud of that. Ultimately, I think I've provided a little direction surrounded by good people doing good work. And that includes just about everyone that's in that room that I wish I could be in today. First of all, I'd like to thank my wife and kids for giving me this opportunity, letting me spend numerous nights and days, ribbon cuttings, different events, things like that. My youngest one's 9. I've pretty much been in office since he could walk. And so, you know, they've really been very sacrificial with their time, and I'm very appreciative of that. I also want to thank the residents of Lake Forest for giving me this opportunity. It was a tough re-election 4 years ago, but you know, I'm grateful for everyone who supported me, and even those that didn't. I hope that you know, they saw that I did my best to try to make the city a better place. I'd like to thank the staff. I think that we have a terrific staff. I'll start with the city clerk's office, and we've had a number of really good city clerks who've done a fantastic job of helping residents, making sure that our elections are run very well, even unfortunately recall elections and all those sorts of things that occurred during my tenure, but they've done such a great job, and they provide a good face for the city of Lake Forest. Next, I'd like to thank Public Works. They've done just an amazing job over my 8 years. A lot of the projects that we'd talked about for years in this city actually got completed during my tenure. My involvement was very, very little. But you know, I look back on a editorial that I wrote to the Orange County Register, Saddleback Valley News, actually, back in 2002, saying, I think the city needs a senior center. Well, now we have a senior center, and I understand why it took so long. I was a little naive way back when, and just thought we should just get it done. Now I understand why the council took as long as they did, and you look at that senior center that unfortunately is empty during the pandemic, but it's beautiful. The first few months that it was open, you saw the number of seniors that were in there who were really thoroughly enjoying it every day, whether they were in a yoga class or they were bingo or watching a movie together. The camaraderie, the ability for them to just spend time with one another. We know how important that is at all ages, and especially as you get older and you're not engaging in the workplace and with your family as much. So the Public Works has done just a great job with parks, all the infrastructure, the discussions we've had about the pavement condition index, things like that. They keep Lake Forest looking good, and I'm very appreciative of that. I just want to say thanks to the city attorney as well, both Mr. Richardson as well as his colleague, Mr. Smith. They've done a fantastic job. As you all know, we have very little litigation. We don't spend a whole lot of money on lawsuits and things like that. And I really think they've done a great job of representing the city and keeping our costs low. Just also want to thank the finance department, just keeping us fiscally sound, making sure that each department is sticking to their budgets and even spending under budget, trying to make sure that we're always mindful of our spending and making sure that we're the fiscally conservative city that we represent ourselves to be. So thank you very much to the finance department. Economic development has done a great job working with the chamber, working with local businesses, trying to bring businesses in, retain businesses. So thank you to them as well. And police services, just outstanding job. Lake Forest is generally a safe place. Does it mean that we have no crime? Absolutely not. No city does, but they've done a great job. I'm very proud of being a city that's represented by the Orange County Sheriff's Department and also the Orange County Fire Authority, which we know did a tremendous job over the last few weeks with the fires that came right up to backyards in our community. And so very thankful for both the Sheriff's Department and the Fire Authority. Community services, it's been a rough year, but it was just so much fun going to all the different events, seeing how they bring joy to residents, how they try to provide a diverse amount of events and services to the community, and just very, very impressed with that. And then with the city manager and the assistant city manager, Keith and Deborah. Can't say enough good things about you guys. You're just amazing people. You work hard. You do such a great job for our community, and just want to thank you for that. And Deborah, I know at the beginning of your time as a city manager, you had probably the most rough experience of your life, and I prayed for you. I think you're an amazing person, and just want to thank you for your dedication to the community. Sorry. Then I want to let the commissioners and the stars and all the volunteers in the community know how much I appreciate them. Lake Forest is a great place because of the people. We have a lot of great people who are trying to make sure that this city remains a great place to live. And so just so thankful for all those volunteers and the time that they put in, not for pats on the back, definitely not for compensation in any way, but just because they care about their fellow residents and they care about their community. So thanks to all of those. And then finally with my thanks, I want to thank my colleagues. After serving for 8 years here, I know how much time you spend every day, and there's a lot of residents who they view a city council and a mayor like they see on television. They think that we work full-time, sit in city hall, we make big giant paychecks. They don't know that you get a little bit of stipend, and when it comes out to an hourly level, you're making very, very little. In some ways, it might even be costing you money to serve your community. And so I have ultimate profound respect for you, Nikki, being a new mom and, serving our city as mayor this year. Mark, you did an amazing job coming back to the council and serving as mayor in a time where we were trying to get past a tumultuous period. And you just stepped up and were just such an incredible leader. Scott, you're like an older brother that I've never had. And I'm an older brother to 3 younger ones, but you're like the older brother I never had. And, so thank you very much for your dedication to the community. You're out there all the time. I go into places and, I let them know that I'm a city councilman. And they say, Scott, you must know Scott. And so thank you for, the 10 years you've put in to the city. And I'm also very thankful that Mike was willing to step up when we had that need. He obviously wasn't doing it because he wanted to be in elected office for a long time. He served his 1 year and he's up today just like I am. But, we're fortunate to have someone who could hit the ground running, who understood how the city operated from being a former police chief. And it's just been a pleasure to serve with him. As I wrap up here, I just want to say congratulations to Doug and Robert. I didn't know them very well prior to their deciding to run for office. I may have met Doug, but I don't even recall doing that. I'd met Robert on a handful of occasions, but I think that you have 2 incredible individuals who are going to be a great addition to your city council. And I feel confident knowing that as I leave, there's good people with good ideas, great hearts, and who think logically and reasonably and are going to make good decisions. I might not agree with everyone, but I know they're going to do a good job. So 3 things that I hope that the city stays focused on. First would be infrastructure, roads, buildings, parks. I think that's one of the most important things that the city needs to focus on. So I hope that it continues to. Second is public safety. It's really our number one responsibility in my mind in local city government, that we keep our citizens safe. And, so I know that you've done that, and I hope that we just continue to stay focused on that, even as some parts of the country have not been as focused. They're trying to pull money away from public safety and spend it in other places. I hope that we continue to stay very focused on that. And then finally, of those 3 things, stay focused on fiscal sustainability. Let's just continue to watch how we spend our money so that we can spend it on the things that are most important for the city. And there's plenty of things that seem like they're good things to spend money on, but if we're not focusing on our core responsibilities, then we're letting our residents down. So I hope that we just continue to stay fiscally sound. And those are the 3 things to stay focused on. 2 things I wish I would have been able to finish, and I hope that you all will consider. One is the CCA that we talked about today. And it could take a while. You might not get it done at your next meeting, but I hope that you guys continue to take a close look at that. And the other one is Whispering Hills Park, which was brought up at the last meeting. And, I've been a supporter of the development of that park for a long time, but the funding just hasn't been there. And as some residents brought up at the last meeting, since we're not building that other park just next to City Hall, there's going to be a little bit of money that could potentially be used there. So I hope that you all do consider that. Thank you again for allowing me to serve for the last 8 years. It's truly been a pleasure, and I wish every single one of you the best.
Thank you, Councilmember Robinson, for the heartfelt message. And I know I can speak for all my colleagues, actually, that we will miss working with you. You are just a kind person, very fair. You always bring great ideas to the table. So we'll definitely miss working with you, but hopefully we'll see you around town.
Absolutely. I'm not going anywhere.
Mayor Metazity, Mayor?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Councilman Robinson, thanks for encouraging me to run in the first place. Thanks for keeping your commitment to run in 2012. We've been through a lot of fights together, but my dad always taught me, if you break it, fix it. We had some chaos in the city, and I'm thankful that you hung in there with us, and that we have a strong city council, a city council that's dedicated to the future of our city and not looking at personal petties, but looking out for the citizens of our city. And your service here was a blessing to us. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.
And Mayor, if I could,
Go right ahead, sir.
thank you. Well, Councilmember Robinson, thank you for your community service. I called him today to thank him and chat with him a little bit. I just wanted to say again, thank you very much for your support and your leadership in the community. I greatly appreciate that. And so, as you might suspect, there's a tile plaque in your future. And it reads, Dwight Robinson, extending our sincere appreciation for exemplary service to the community, as city council member for the city of Lake Forest, November 2012 to December 2020. So thank you again for your service. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Much everyone for your comments as well. I think we just do a receive and file on this. And then we move on to item number 13, resolution recognizing outgoing council member, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem Mike James. I understand he's out for the evening, so Madam City Manager, how do we do just receive and file this as well?
If you could vote to approve the resolution.
Move it.
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, let's call roll.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Teddemer.
Aye.
Councilmember Voits.
Yes.
Mayor Motazedi. Mayor Motazedi?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Item number 14, comments by outgoing Mayor Pro Tem Mike James. I don't know how we handle this item.
Mayor
Is out.
Motazedi, we can just receive and file this. There's no vote necessary. Mayor Pro Tem James obviously wasn't able to join us tonight, but we have a tile plaque for him as well, which we could have read aloud.
Well, first of all,
Go right ahead.
thank you. Well, Mike, I know you're watching. Thank you very much for stepping up, as we mentioned earlier. Thank you very much for stepping up and helping to take care of an open seat for that term. We appreciate that. We appreciate your community service over many years in many ways, this being the latest expression. I know we'll stay in touch, but thank you very much for all you've done. We appreciate that. So tile plaque in your future as well. To Mike James, extending our sincere appreciation for exemplary service to the community as city council member for the city of Lake Forest, October 2019 to December 2020. Take care. All the best.
Mayor, I too like to say thank you to Mike. Obviously, we came to Mike when a council member abruptly resigned. Mike, you stepped in. I think that you guys in law enforcement have a motto, to protect and to serve. You once again stood forward and served our city with dignity and honor, and thank you for that. I always knew you were the honorable, whether you were on the city council or not, so thank you. All of our prayers are for you to get better and your family. So we'll hold you up in prayer and continue to pray for your healing and your cleanse of this virus. Get well, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. We'll stay in touch. Thank you for serving. God bless you, and God bless your family. Thank you, sir.
Yes, and I'd like to make a comment too. Gosh, I really don't like these goodbyes. But to Mike James, I am so grateful for you as well to serve as Mayor Pro Tem alongside with me. I really appreciate you being open to my ideas and working with me on some of them, and also stepping up when I needed it the most. Being a mom, a new mom during a pandemic. Sorry, has been very challenging and very taxing. And my husband is a merchant marine, so he's gone a lot. And I think every council member has been so supportive, but I do appreciate you stepping up for me during those times. Thankful to you and Councilmember Robinson for all your support. So yeah, thank you both for your time. Now that my makeup is totally ruined, we will move on. We received and filed that. And we will move on to item number 15. Resolution certifying the November 3rd, 2020 election. Madam City Manager.
Mayor and members of the council, to make it official, we need to have a vote on the resolution which certifies the November 3rd, 2020 election.
I'd like to move that resolution.
I will.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. I'd like to just draw your attention to the revised resolution that is on the dais and that I emailed to the offsite members. We need to make sure we adopt the revised resolution with the revised Exhibit 1, not the one that's attached to your packet.
So my motion would be to recommend approval of the revised resolution.
I will second that motion.
Okay, let's take it to a roll call vote.
Okay. Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Tedmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Voights.
Yes.
Mayor Motazedi.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with Mayor Pro Tem absent.
Mayor Motazedi,
Go ahead.
we'd like to call for a recess at this point.
All right, we are taking.
Okay, I'll just jump in and say we're going to take a 10-minute recess? 10-minute recess. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Nikki, are you still on the phone?
Enter the passcode and press the pound or hash key. Joining the meeting.
If we could reconvene in just a moment so we can carry on, everyone, please. Thank you. I know, it's just us. And the mayor.
Councilman Voigt's here. Mayor Motazadi.
So Madam City Clerk, are you ready to go? You are ready to go, very good. So that brings us to item 16, the installation and oath of office ceremony. I'll turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Councilmember Tedimer. Due to the pandemic, we've had to forego our in-person swearing-in ceremonies. And so, in order to do our swearing-in and give it its proper due, we pre-recorded it in a safe manner earlier in the week. And so we'd like to share those videos with the community now. So we'll cue the video for the pre-recorded oath of office for council members Doug Serbo and Robert Pequeño.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Doug Serbo,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations, you are
Thank
sworn
you.
in as council member.
Thank you.
And I would like to invite Councilmember Doug Serbo up to the dais.
I, Robert Pequeño,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I would like to invite Councilmember Robert Pequeño to join us up at the dais.
All right, welcome to the new council members. Item 17 on the agenda are comments by incoming council member Robert Pequeño. You have the floor.
Thank you. First, I want to give thanks to God. Without Him, nothing is possible. I also want to thank my family, friends, supporters, and all the voters who put their trust in me. I look forward to working with my colleagues and the city staff to make our city a better place to call home. I also want to ask Dwight and Mike James to get better, so real soon. Thank you.
And that brings us to item 18, comments by incoming council member Doug Serbo. Sir,
Thank you, Councilman Teddemer. Oops, doing something to turn this on, or is it?
yeah, hit that red button right in the middle. Right there, hit that.
There we go. See, it's all learning curve when you have this new adventure. So first of all, after coming after a great Thanksgiving weekend, it's the time where we sit there and think about what we're grateful for. And there's a lot of people have been asking me, how do you feel about this new adventure? And a few adjectives come to mind, and things like I'm excited, and I've been very welcomed by the city staff and council members, which is very appreciative, and just very excited and ready to go and motivated. And just after being here for 4 decades in the city of Lake Forest, I'm just so grateful, so thankful. And the last adjective is, people have been saying, you're the Honorable Doug Serbo, and that sounds kind of strange to me, but it's a reminder, I guess, of my role now in continuing, service to the community and doing it in an honorable way. And so it's not that I've earned that title yet. I want to make sure every day that's what I'm going to try and live up to. And I have to also thank so many people that were part of this election for me, and people who invited me to run, those who believed in me that I would do good for our community, and the countless volunteers that helped out on the street and doing mailers and lots of effort, to make that successful. And of course, I want to thank my wife, Kathy, of 37 years as well, who's watching tonight too. So I'll be home soon, honey. But I'm also very excited to become more familiar with our fellow council members, as well as the people who serve on the commissions, the city staff, and I know the quality of this city organization, and I'm just so grateful to be part of it and excited to see what kind of a difference that I can, make with good counsel and guidance and the leadership that I've exuded in other community type of things. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I appreciate it so much.
Right. Again, welcome to both of you. Thank you very much.
Yes, welcome to both of you guys. You're going to make our city very proud. I'm convinced of that. Thank you for your service.
Brings us to item 19. Let me just check to see, Madam Mayor, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great.
So I was going to carry on unless you were going to run the meeting. I was going to carry on for you.
Please carry on, just because it's intermittent here.
Very good. I will. Thank you. So item 19, selection of mayor and mayor pro tem for the 2021 calendar year. So the process, which is spelled out in the agenda, we will go first to take care of selection of a mayor, followed by selection of the mayor pro tem. City manager, do you have anything else to offer at this point? Okay. So colleagues, I will open it up for nominations for mayor of the city of Lake Forest for 2021.
Yes, I move that.
I'm sorry. Someone was speaking.
Go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead, Mayor.
I was going to nominate Scott Voits for mayor, just because of, if we're doing things rotationally, he would be, next in the rotation. So that is who I nominate for mayor next year.
All right. Any other nominations for mayor?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on that? No. If not, then we will go ahead and vote for Councilmember Scott Voits to be the mayor of the city of Lake Forest for 2021.
Roll call vote. Councilmember Serbo.
Aye.
Councilmember Pequeño.
Yes.
Councilmember Teddemer.
Aye.
Councilmember Voits.
Yes.
And Mayor Motazedi.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much. And as indicated, the mayor will assume that role beginning January 1st, 2021. Congratulations, Mayor-elect.
Thank you.
Voits.
Thank you all.
Next item is selection of mayor pro tem for the city of Lake Forest for calendar year 2021. And I will open nominations.
I'll make a motion that we select newly elected Robert Pequeño as mayor pro tem for 2021.
Okay, any
I'll
other
second
nominations?
that.
We have a nomination and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. So we have a nomination for Robert Pequeño, Councilmember Pequeño, to become Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Lake Forest in 2021. Let's go ahead and vote on that, please.
Okay. Councilmember Serbo.
Aye.
Councilmember Pequeño.
Yes.
Councilmember Teddemer.
Aye.
Councilmember Voights.
Yes.
Mayor Motazedi.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Very good. Congratulations to Mayor Pro Tem-elect Pequeño for that position. Next item, City Manager's Report.
Well, first, I'd like to offer my congratulations to Mayor Pro Tem-elect Robert Pequeño and Councilmember Doug Serbo and Mayor-elect Scott Voights. We will have a great year in 2021. Beyond that, I have nothing further this evening.
All right, Councilmember Serbo, any additional comments?
I just want to reiterate Dwight Robinson and his service, and you look at the leadership that he's given, and the more I've learned and grown with him and been inspired by him and what he's done in the city along with the other council members and this entire city organization, I am amazed. And I stand in awe, and I want to take his inspiration in terms of leaving the city in a better place, and that's something that I really want to aspire to, but I want to thank him personally, as well as Mike James, who I've known for over 20 years. His kids and my kids played baseball together here in District 55, and I was an umpire for them, and so we've had a long association with them as their families, and I want to, first of all, keep him in my prayers also for his healing from the COVID, and then also just thank him for the step up. He's that kind of guy. We all know that he is, and just want to echo those comments about his service to the community.
Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem-elect Pequeño.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Voights, or I'm sorry, Mayor-elect Voights. I'll get it eventually.
You know, I'd like to once again thank outgoing Councilman Dwight Robinson, Mayor Dwight Robinson, because he was a great mayor for the city. He had the privilege of being the mayor during the opening of our sports park, which is the crown jewel of sports parks in South Orange County. He's a man of integrity, smarts. He may call me his older brother, but I always looked at him as my guidance keeper. He's the guy that keeps me my sight true north. And I thank Mike James for serving our city in a time of need. He stepped in and wasn't real excited about it, as can be seen that he could have run and been the mayor of the city of Lake Forest in 2021 as the outgoing mayor pro tem, but he served our city with dignity and grace, smart and just a great team player. You know, the city of Lake Forest went through some trying times. Me and Dwight have seen the best of our city and at times the worst. And so I think that our city is on firm ground now. And so my congratulations to Mayor Pro Tem-elect Pequeño for running. And thank you, Doug Serbo, for once again serving the city of Lake Forest. And this is going to be a new venture, I know, but if it's any track record of your service to our youth in AYSO Region 85 and Area 11, you're going to do an outstanding job. And I thank you both for being willing to serve us in this city in this capacity. And may God richly bless you as they bless our city. May God's healing hand be upon Mike James and his family, that he gets through this and that God would comfort him right now and allow him to start feeling better in the coming days. And so that should be the prayer for all of us. And so thank you all. I have nothing further.
Thank you. Mayor Motazedi, any comments?
I just wanted to congratulate the two new council members. I look forward to somehow meeting you in person once things get better. But congratulations! It's crazy, it's wild, it's fun. So I look forward to working with you both.
Thank you.
That's all for now.
Thank you, Mayor. And I will close out the evening first by saying thank you to Mayor Motazedi for serving this past year. I know there'll be opportunities later on, but I also want to just acknowledge tonight, thank you for serving as a mayor for this last year. I know it was a tough one to do it. We get a lot of fun things to do as a mayor, and I know those were not available to you because of the pandemic. So hopefully there's an opportunity later on for you maybe to revisit that and get a fuller, richer experience as the mayor. I also wanted to compliment you and staff on the work you did on the State of the City. The video, I thought it was really well done and really a great piece. So I want to thank you, Mayor, for your service as well as your contribution toward the State of the City. I thought it was very well done.
Councilman Teddemer, I'd
you
like
very
to
much.
just chime in on that real quick, if you may.
Please.
Mayor, you've done a great job for us in a time of pandemic. I love your commitment to the city, and I congratulate you on your new baby. I know there'll be another year, a better year, as mayor for you, because you have great things before you. So thanks for your service in 2020. I know I'll be able to expand on that in a future date, but thank you, and stay well, and God bless you, and thank you. Thank you, Councilman Tedder.
You're welcome. Seeing nothing else, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.